Imzara paused, grabbing a piece of cloth from the table. "So here's what I drew," she said as she sat beside him. Her fingers gracefully smoothed the fabric piece over his lap. The clear lines she had sketched caught the moment of impact. Looking at the colliding animals, he could almost hear the crash of skull meeting skull. This isn't part of the thing, but these are Pachycephalosauruses, just for context here. "I feel like this often lately." She pointed to the smaller one on the left.
"He's just like me for real," she said.
He's just like me. He's one of the... He's the few little pleasures left in life. She shifted to the larger creature, and Noah saw the detail in the hardened features of the face. "And he's the pain. Even when they meet, everything hurts."
That's kind of beautiful.
About a freaking dinosaur. It is, but like, I don't know. I never thought to like emotionally resonate with a Pachycephalosaurus.
I like that. It's a good moment. The writing's a little stilted, but the sentiment is actually beautiful.
Yeah. Sure. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another meeting of the St. Balasar University English Club podcast. I'm Andrew.
And I'm buzzed up on Bean Brew and itching to get started on this thing. I'm Jay.
I'm buzzed up on Bean Brew and as excited as a super glider's wings and the pterodactyl hill. I'm
hungry as a bovar for the knowledge of this book.
They didn't even give the Pachycephalosauruses a name. They just were like, these are like stone-headed lizards. They didn't even say lizards. Okay, anyways, we're getting way ahead of ourselves.
They were creatures.
Alex Astor, you would love these guys. We are back with another sequel. I feel like we've been doing a lot of sequels lately. Mm-hmm. This is Noah, Man of Resolve, the second book in Tim Chaffey and K. Marie Adams' Noah trilogy, mm-hmm. which we really enjoyed the first one. I don't even know how you would describe it. This is a sequel to a YA fantasy masquerading young earth creationist propaganda piece.
It's like a sales pitch for the Ark Encounter, which for anybody who doesn't know is a giant replica of Noah's Ark out in Kentucky. And at the same time as being a sales pitch for that exhibit, it's also like a expanded universe where like this is the story of like the version of Noah and his wife that you will meet the animatronics of if you go to that museum. That's not a lie. That's actually true. They do have animatronics.
No, there's an Imzara animatronic and everything. We need to go one day. We haven't gone yet, but one day we'll do like a vlog or something.
I hope it bites me in the head, and then we can start calling it like the bite of 27 or something.
Well, it looks like Noah wants a big hug. This is going to be an interesting one. These are always light and breezy, and I may never actually bring this up in the episode, but it's very interesting to me how, like, this is some of our more enjoyable submissions to the English Club podcast, where it's just, like, baby's first YA fantasy novel. Like, we've read this so many times in real life critique group with people who have like written their first or second in a trilogy YA fantasy adventure thing, but this is like purporting to be this weird intersection between fiction and nonfiction in the kind of this Bible literalism angle.
Yeah,
so
they're walking a super fine line, and you can see it in the way that they trip over themselves in the intro and in the outro to be like, remember, this is inspired by the Bible, but we don't claim it's actually the Bible, because like they don't want to alienate their target audience that's like very sensitive to what they might perceive as heretical. So it's like super strange, but I think they pull it off. That part of it, at least.
Yeah. They don't pull off a lot, but they pull off that part of it. It's a parable. So, without any further ado, we will get into it. I just wanted to make sure that we give our thanks and praise to the secret group of people that pulls all the strings behind the scenes. They are the Order of the Orb Fox, which is Aidan Feldkamp, Arthur Clybourne Wrights, Dreekolith, Pink Catsy, Rin, and Simply FJ. And we also have our card-carrying English Club podcast members, which are Ace, Evil Red Flame, Hobby Moth, Natalia, Navari, Mallard Griff, and Milo is Tired. We are also supported by anyone watching this on YouTube. I just want to thank you guys so much for your support. Having you guys in this community has been just one of my greatest pleasures with the whole SBU project. and I'm really glad with what we've been able to do. We have a lot of big plans for our channel members and supporters this year, so I hope you join up if you can. If not, we're happy that you hang out either way.
Thank you so much for being here. Love you guys.
So Jay, just to be completely transparent, I did not want to read this book. I was thinking, if you don't know, what we do is we hand the Order of the Orb Fox like a handful of selections for a poll, and they vote for whatever they want to see next. They voted for Noah 2, and I was just like, the last thing that the internet needs is more shit libs being like, young Earth creationism is not scientific. And I did not want to do this, but the cover of this book, if you haven't seen it, for the benefit of the listeners, depicts what we can only assume is the biblical Noah from Genesis fighting a T-Rex in a gladiator arena.
Oh, yeah.
And I want to see a gladiator fight with dinosaurs so incredibly badly. So if you're not into the whole Bible literalism, or that whole thing is just kind of squicky for you, put yourself in my shoes as like this petulant child waiting for the inevitable like dinosaur T-Rex fight. Like every time something happened, I was like, okay, now's the gladiator fight. Now's the gladiator fight. And I just like, it kept going and going and going.
How did the petulant child inside you feel when you were like 80% of the way through and it still didn't happen?
Bad.
Were you like starting to sweat?
Bad. Well, stuff came up that like satisfied the petulant child for a while, but like it did not feel good.
Yeah, the child could only be like temporarily placated.
until T-Rexes needed to freaking happen. It's actually a pretty light book as far as plot goes, so this should be a breezy episode like I mentioned, but there's some interesting stuff that happens. I'm really excited to dive into it.
Yep, let's do it. I'll take point on this one. There is a lot of like side stuff that can be totally excised. So I know there's a couple people in the Discord, plug for the Discord, that have read this already. So if you're one of those people and you're thinking like, wait a second, they forgot this or that, that might be true. But also it might just be that we cut it out because there's like a billion side characters that don't matter. So without further ado, we pick up in chapter 1 right where we left off in the first book. Noah and Co. are fleeing, and Nama and the evil seer are plotting to capture Emzara so that Noah will obey Nama. So
right.
Okay, I guess like she's still. It did just happen, so she's still like trying to get Noah to fall in love with her or something. Like she's still on that.
Right. So for those of you who did not listen to our first episode, Noah is this guy from this book called Genesis, who he's our intrepid hero of 40 years old, but this is like Bible timelines where people live to be like 900 or whatever. In our last book, he's married his beautiful wife Emzara, who loves to like draw animals and obey whatever patriarchal figure exists in her life at the given time. So that's exciting. And they are in this city-state called Havilah, which is ruled over by this evil despot named Lamech. And Lamech is kind of this figurehead, and we have this worm tongue / Darai type character called the Seer, who like shows up in the beginning and then just phases out of the book, which I was really disappointed by.
Yeah.
And he's just like, you should worship this giant serpent who demands child sacrifice. And the daughter of the king, Nama, has become like his chief priestess / princess / de facto ruler of what is now essentially Satan Town.
/ librarian also.
/ librarian. Yeah, she's like, she gives me a lot of Azula vibes if you need like a reference point. She's kind of unhinged, but in like a fun way, you know what I mean? Where she's always like dancing around while the city is burning like Nero, and she's my favorite character. But
she's the only fun character, indisputably.
She's literally the only fun character.
So she, in the first book, wanted to get Noah to cheat on his wife with her, and Noah spurned her. And because the second book opens like right where the first one ended, she has just been spurned and is like already trying to think of another way to get Noah back. So failing being able to actually be attractive to him or like make a connection with him, she decides that she's going to force him to marry her by capturing Imzara and holding her hostage. But meanwhile, Noah and company are like already fleeing the city, unbeknownst to her. They're on their way out. So there's like some back and forth where like a bunch of different characters are like trying to gather at the dock, and it's really just like kind of irritating to read because like they keep gaining and losing people. But then finally everybody that matters is assembled on the docks. The guards show up just at the last second to try to chase them, and their boat capsizes as Noah and friends sail home.
So there's some interesting stuff that goes on with Imzara's character, and I don't know how much of this was necessarily developed in the first book, but like I mentioned, Imzara's whole thing is she just loves drawing animals, and she loves whoever daddy is at any given situation.
She just gravitates towards whatever man is in the scene. Like, actually, will like literally move towards them and like just sort of be next to them.
It feels like there is a furtive attempt, at least in the beginning, to give her more agency, kind of in like a Star Wars princess kind of way, where she's like, Noah, we need to swim to the boat so we can circumnavigate these guards, and that caper that's kind of just headache-inducing that Jay was alluding to. She like gets down and dirty with the boys, but she's still squarely the girl one. And the gender politics are just so interesting to me, and I wonder how much we're meant to explore it, because there's this other part, like when they're on the boat sailing away, and Noah catches up Imzara on the whole, like, this evil princess tried to seduce me thing, and Imzara's just like, wow, I thank God for having such a loyal husband. Thank the creator for Noah not cheating on me. But then Noah keeps going on and on about it syntactically. He's like, she and I didn't do anything, babe. Really, really nothing. I kept myself pure for you, babe. She's disgusting to me. Well, I mean, she's beautiful on the outside, but inside she's disgusting. You're the only one for me. It goes like on and on. Like, it felt really weird.
He doth
and then
protest
Zara
too much,
accepts
just
it.
a little. Yeah, and then she just rolls with it.
Is that intentional by the authors to like have her just be okay with this?
I don't know, because it's really closely clustered to another thing that happens on the boat on the way home, which is where Noah and the guys have like the cleanest locker room talk ever. You know what I'm talking about? It's just like, I don't know, it's like the extremely, extremely tame Christian version of locker room talk, where they're just like trying to get a tear to like hook up with somebody, but not hook up, like ask out on a date.
Right. Yeah, so they just leave this city to be overrun by Satanists. I mean, they don't really have like a connection to the city or anything, but like, there are heroes. Why they don't care that this is happening?
No, they totally abandon Havil to the cult of Nakash.
So once we pick up where we left off, once we escape from Satan City, there's a 3-year time skip, which, I mean, I guess to Bible people, 3 years is not the same length to people who only live like 80 years. But like, there was this whole thing where like Imzara was set up to be this MacGuffin, and I thought there would be like agents of Nama like pursuing them, but no, 3 years go by and nothing happens. They go back to their idyllic little village of Iri Geshem. So we have Noah and Ater are our big ones. They were our deuteragonists of the first book who did like that quest to go to the evil city. And then they bring back Tubal Cain, who is Nama's brother. He's like a prince, and he's big, and he likes to be a blacksmith, and that's all you need to know about him. He used to be prince of Satan City, but then he decided that he loves God, or he always loved God and held on to his faith or whatever, and now he lives in idyllic little village making various metal objects
doodads
and participating in a term that I brought up in the first episode, and I'll refresh our memory on it. TFLD. Twee friendly little dialogue.
Yeah.
The true length of this book is, let's be charitable and say 70% of what we actually get. Because so much of the dialogue is chocked full of Hello, Noah. It is so good to see you. Thank you so much for visiting me. Do you remember this little anecdote from a time that we haven't seen that has no conflict and doesn't modify our characterization in any way? And then Noah will be like, yes, I do. I just love doing favors for you so much, father-in-law. I love you. So after this stupid time skip, after they escape Satan City, they just go back to making boats. Noah is really good at making boats, wink, wink, and wants to keep making bigger and better boats, wink, wink. And it's just like, come on.
He wants to, but like distantly. Like, he doesn't really have a goal in this book. Like, none of the characters, except for Nama, have goals, and even her goal is not that urgent to her. So, like, there's going to be a lot of meandering. And I think that, like, that lack of goal is also what facilitates this random 3-year time skip, where I just want to get out ahead of this and say, like, if you're one of the people who's thinking what you were mentioning earlier about how, like, oh, well, people live hundreds of years, 3 years doesn't really matter. I'm going to go ahead and rebuff that right now by saying, like, a lot can still happen in 3 years. Even if people have, like, a longer sense of time, a day is still 24 hours long. You can still do the same amount in it. And, like, it's plenty of time for Lamech to, like, do more scheming to try to conquer Iri Geshem, or, like, Noah to figure out exactly what he wants to do next with his life now that he's married. So I don't feel like that's a good reason.
Yeah, I don't know. I think a lot about the elasticity of time. I mentioned it in the first episode. I feel like weeks pass to me now like days used to, so it's all kind of, like, screwed up in my mind. Again, I don't understand well, I do understand it, but I don't like the gender politics. This whole society really presupposes an archy of patters, because Noah is no longer daddy in this paradigm after they leave Satan City, because now there's Ara, his father-in-law, who is a superior daddy to him. So he goes back in this, like, stupid twee little friendly section to being, like, the second in command in terms of daddy. And Ara is just like, his father-in-law is just like, good job not cheating on my daughter 3 years ago, Noah. I love you. Let's keep making boats forever. And Noah's like, yes, father-in-law, I will. I'm like, who cares?
Yeah, there's so much, like, bestowing of, like, approval from authority figures.
Right.
And it's like, isn't Noah an adult, like, with a job? Like, why does he give a shit? Like, I mean, I get him caring about what his family members think of him, but, like, why does he allow himself to be, like, subservient to this older man?
Don't know, because there's always a bigger daddy.
There's always a bigger daddy. And sometimes that daddy's made of fire. But spoilers.
So after a million pages of stupid dialogue, King Lamech arrives, and then there's a daddy fight. Because King Lamech wants to be daddy of Iri Geshem. I need to stop saying daddy. He's gonna get really old really fast. So he shows up and he's like, take me to the town council. He has this retainer of, like, some guards and some sexy dancers who do, like, magic tricks. But he's oddly like deferential and diplomatic and kind. He's like very like, hello, dear friends, I have a great opportunity for you. How about we go to the council building and talk about it? Because, not to use the D word again, but there's a patriarchal structure that rules over the village that must be consulted for anything to happen.
He wants to get locked in a room with all those daddies and really work shit out.
Right.
And that's exactly what they do, by gosh, by golly.
The town council and Lamech all come together and, like, have this weird court session where, like, Noah watches in horror. Even, like, I know that, like, he's the Satan King, but, like, he's still being, like, pretty, like, diplomatic, but they're all, like, oh no, he had sexy dancers. That means he's up to no good. And
he's being, like, a little too friendly.
Right.
Like, a little too friendly. His smile's a little uncanny.
Right.
The thing that bothered me most about this scene, though, before we get into the content of, like, their exchange, is the way that Noah and Imzara are just totally sidelined and are whispering each other in, like, what I was trying not to imagine as, like, high school bleachers.
Right.
While, like, a bunch of, like, older kids put on a play for them or something. Like, literally, they don't do anything in this scene but just comment on what's happening, like maids and butlers in a Victorian novel.
It's very side characters in a tournament arc of an anime, but, like, instead of a tournament happening, it's verbal sparring. So
Yeah.
I love and I hate this scene in a lot of ways that kind of appeal directly to me. So Lamech's basically just like, you guys make really good boats. Let's do business. I have gold. Gold is really good. We can have this economic trade deal thing worked out. But the Town Daddy Council is like, well, money is good, but your culture is bad, so we don't want to have any sort of exchange with you, lest we pollute our pure culture with your snake-worshipping cult. Which, again, they're objectively evil Satan worshippers, but, like, I don't like saying, hey, we won't enter in, like, neutral economic trade with you because we don't like your culture.
Yeah, it's just... your culture is just, like, inferior, you know? Like, it's just not as good as ours. Like, It just sucks and is shit.
Right. And
so, no, actually.
And the town council decides this. But there's something inexplicable about this scene that really appeals to me. It's this weird combination of, like, really boring and rigidly structured dialogue where they're like, all who assent, please raise your hand. And, like, it goes on and on like that. But it's also very interesting political posturing because, like we mentioned, Lamech's being very deferential for an evil king. He rolls with the punches of being told, hey, we don't like your culture and we don't want anything to do with you because we don't like your culture. He takes it on the chin. So I'm like, oh, what's he playing at? And, like, legitimately, I've written council scenes like this on my, like, iPod Touch in the corner of the youth group room at St. Balasar Church or whatever. So, like, again, it's very, like, first critique group submission ever, like, YA fantasy, because, like, I've written scenes like this before. It's very cool to me.
It's, like, too stilted in the way that, like, it is, like, one line of dialogue for one line of dialogue, Council Lamech, intersperse Noah and Imzara commentary. But it also, like you're saying, like, it does legitimately have tension in it. Mm-hmm. Like, Lamech is being a little too conciliatory, and that's kind of weird, but we don't know what he's up to yet. Maybe it's nothing.
Right.
And that's good on a fundamental level as far as storytelling goes.
Yeah. So it's this weird contradiction where it sucks and it's really boring, but if only because of my nostalgia, it really does appeal to me.
So eventually they decide not to engage in any kind of trade relations, but for some reason that, like, was very confusing to me, maybe intentionally, they decide to let Lamech leave one guard and one scribe here to, like, record information, because Lamech has this, like, side project at home where he's building a library that involves him sending out scribes to, like, all of the other nations and, like, having somebody write about them and then bring what they wrote back home and, like, store it in an archive.
And this is
so
bad.
The council is okay with this.
Right.
And this is bad. Accumulation of knowledge is tacitly bad just because it's associated with the villains, right. I guess, and, like, it's credited later with giving Nama, like, more access to evil magic, so there's something going on there. But yeah, they decide that they're going to let this guy stay with them, and that's kind of good because one of the people that stays behind is this guy named Gorin, who Noah and Emzara remember from being in Havil in the first book. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, he was, like, the one not Christian, but creator following guard, and he, like, helped them escape in some way. He was a side character. Don't worry about Goran Lagan. He's just a guy. Yeah,
so Goran Lagan basically confirms immediately that Lamech is, like, up to no good, and that he has, like, fully abandoned the creator back home in the last 3 years. Like, he's fully polytheistic now, and he married a second wife that was mentioned briefly in the first book. We learned that he married her specifically to spite God, like, not for any other reason. It was because he wanted to defy God, which is so funny. So Garen decides he wants to, like, move in with them permanently, like in Iri Geshem.
Right.
Like, he wants to leave Havil, but he wants to bring his family over, and that's going to be important in just a second. So, hard cut to Emzara being pregnant now.
I don't know why I did that. That's not exciting. Well, I guess it's okay because they're married.
Yeah. So she's literally barefoot and pregnant and goes to visit her dad to break the news. He learns before Noah. For a second, it seems like she's going to keep it a secret and there's going to be, like, some excitement there. But then, like, in the same chapter, she then just, like, immediately goes and tells Noah. So I don't know why we needed 2 scenes about that.
We get like 3 scenes about that. She tells Ara, her father, she tells Ater's girlfriend, she tells Tubal Cain's wife, she tells like a lot of random people that she's pregnant.
Yeah, she tells Noah, and Ara gives them a house as a gift. This whole time they haven't been living together, I guess, for some reason. Then, in the next chapter, Ara and Ater are found dead.
Oh,
so we haven't really introduced... Oh no! We haven't really reintroduced Ater yet. I think you said that he's like Noah's surrogate brother or adoptive brother from the first book.
Yeah.
He was a thief that broke into their house when Noah was young, and then they decided to like clothe and feed him instead of killing him or something with a rock, I guess, which is what I would have done. Anyway, Ater is like a goofy guy. He makes bean brew. He was like just starting to date this one girl after being unlucky in love for a long time. So like, oh yeah, also he's like their best friend. So like this is like super tragic. Like it's so sad. Right. And also Ara now is never going to get to see his grandson. And everybody's like freaking out because like murder never happens. Not in our little town of Erie Geshem. No. That never happens here.
Right.
Then there's a funeral chapter that doesn't matter because it's really boring. Like, the funeral doesn't reveal anything about the culture or the characters. Like, it is just a funeral where some people stand around a hole they've dug, and then they chuck Ater and Ara in, and they cover them up, and they cry.
But then there's this, like, weird whodunit arc, which feels protracted, given, like, how obvious it is that Lamech is the murderer, or an agent of Lamech is the murderer. I don't know why they do this whole song and dance. There's this interesting mystery where like they're like, of course the target was Ara because he was on the Town Daddy Council and he said no trade, but Ater just happened to be there. But then there's also this part that we glossed over in the council scene where Ater is like, hey, where's my family? My whole village was murdered before I became a thief, and I don't know where any of my family is. And Lamech is just like, I will look into that for you. But so we know Lamech did it, like, but the characters refuse to just accept this, and Gurren Lagann gets accused of the murder, and there's this whole weird thing. And this is another, like, weird intersection of stupid and realistically stupid for the time frame, where, like, only Noah and Imzara can charge someone with murder. There's no independent judicial body that can say, hey, murder is bad. You have to, like, kill someone, and someone who is a direct family member has to care enough about it.
Family member.
Yes, a male family member. Jesus Christ. So yeah, it's I guess, yeah, there weren't torts before like Jesus was born, but it still it gave me the heebie-jeebies. I don't know what to do with that information.
It is weird. It's like I almost don't want to complain about it because it is some like world building that is at least interesting. Right. But I don't know. Yeah, it's like a little weird. Whatever. So the only reason that the characters even entertain the idea that it couldn't have been Lamech and had to be, or might have been Garen, is because at this point Lamech has already left. So like, even though Gurren Lagann has already all but confirmed that it was Lamech, his like ostensible absence maybe provides an alibi. Also, the characters are like weirdly familiar with like basic crime scene terminology. Like they have a sense of like how detective work works, which was like definitely a little bit of just like the authors bleeding in.
Right.
But it was like, whatever, I get it. I wouldn't have wanted to like try to mind palace a world where like we don't know how to investigate crimes yet, because that would probably be annoying and boring. So right when Garen has been accused and the characters are like, well, Lamech's not here, so maybe, this girl shows up who was one of the dancers on Lamech's ship, and she's like, oh, by the way, he never actually left. He just like parked a few blocks down the water street and then got off and disappeared the other night, and I don't know where he went, and I don't really like him, so can I like chill with y'all? And they're like, first of all, sure, I guess, random sexy dancer. We hated your culture and wanted to like not include you at all 10 minutes ago, but like now you're asking for help, so like I guess it's okay. And even though with this bit of information from her, basically they have confirmation that it was Lamech who, you know, went missing in the night and is right down the road. they're like, but maybe it wasn't. They have some time reminiscing, Noah and Co. do, about things that Aura and Ater did off screen. We get this little montage of like charming moments that mean nothing to us, and like you said, with the small talk and the anecdotes the characters drop in other places, like doesn't add anything. It's supposed to endear us to them, but it's really just like, remember that one time Ater put seawater in your bean brew and you spat it out? Wasn't that a riot? And it's like, I guess, yeah, sure, whatever.
Yeah.
Tedious. It's tedious. Unconvinced with the idea that it might be Garen, and pretty sure, but not 100% certain that it's Lamech. The group, being Noah, Tubal-Cain, and Imzara, decide that they are going to go to Havil. They're going to sail back across the ocean to Evilburg in order to confront Lamech in a public venue and convince people, A, that he shouldn't be king, and B, that they should stop worshipping Nakash. And also, they plan to go fetch Garen's family so that Garen can move in full-time in Irigashem.
So
that's the plan.
It's a fetch quest / defamation campaign that they have to do by going directly into the heart of Evilburg, a place that has religious ties to King Lamech. Great plan.
And a place where, like, no one knows people want to force marry and kill him. So, like, it doesn't make sense, first of all, to, like, chase Lamech all the way back home as civilians. It doesn't make sense for Noah to go in the first place. They might as well just drop it, just assume it was Lamech, and, I mean, they've already decided not to trade with Havil, so I don't know, just, like, fire on sight or something from now on. But instead, Noah's like, no, I gotta settle this, and I'm gonna save everybody's soul in the meantime. Then we get a little perspective shift.
Oh my god.
We have spent some time with Nama. She's in this new house of knowledge that Lamech is building, which is their library. It contains a bunch of evil magic and knowledge about the world. And we get this little bit of flavor retcon, I guess, where we find out that the cults of Sifa are not just like magical martial artists, but they actually draw some of their magic from being
from child sacrifice.
Like, so they're like child sacrifice and that's the source of their magic and martial arts prowess. Noah and Imzara will learn this later, but they never stop to like apply that knowledge back to Ater, who to my knowledge like never fully converted to Godism or whatever they're calling it in this world.
Never fully.
He was still kind of on the fence in the first book, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like the child thing is relatively new because Nama was surprised to learn this. Or
That's
something.
True.
I don't
Maybe
know.
they hadn't started doing it yet.
I really don't want to put Ater on my problematic list because he was just such a he was just a guy in the first book, and
he was such a guy.
I'm not willing to retcon my understanding of this guy after his murder to say he was not only a child murderer but a child predator, and he worshipped Satan. I don't want to do that. I'm sorry. if that's just
it does feel a little mean.
I just refuse to accept this as my canon.
Okay, so Ater will remain in the Hearts of the English Club podcast, a regular fave, not a problematic fave. We'll just we'll pretend his legacy is what we want it to be. So anyway, Nama reads about this, and the seer shows up and is like, "I see that you're enjoying all of this dark knowledge I have procured." And she's like, "Yes, I'm gonna use it to make Noah fall in love with me." And he's like, "Your ambitions are too small, little one. You must think bigger." And he tells her this weird, like, Darth Plagueis story about how the Siphites, like, all got wiped out by a mysterious disease, like, not too long after they started doing child
stuff.
But then he's like, but it won't happen to you, though. If you do the evil stuff, you'll be fine.
Right. But this is why I like Nama so much, because she's still very conflicted about this. She learns about the child thing, and she's hesitant to, like, accept this, but frickin' worm tongue Darai over here is like, oh, it must happen. Don't doubt the serpent. And she kind of like tables it, but having that like doubt in the back of her mind makes her like a very interesting POV.
Yeah, she actually like has internal conflict
Mm-hmm.
in a way that Noah totally doesn't. Like, there are chapters in this book that feel like they were designed to be filed away under, like, internal conflict moments,
Mm-hmm.
but it's always just, like, Noah has some elementary school level doubts about God, and then he prays, and then he's like, actually, my problem is resolved.
Right.
I will believe in God still. And that's the end of it. That happens like 6 times. Anyway, cut back to the gang, Noah, Emzara, and Tubal-Cain. They are on their ship, and they arrive very suddenly, suspiciously suddenly even, in Havil. As soon as they get there. Also, Emzara has a child now. Her child was born. It's named Tara. Soon to be followed, I can only assume, by your sister Poppy. They break ground, or they land. Break ground, that's a building thing. They hit land, they go ashore, and then Lamech shows up out of the crowd alongside Nama, who is wearing one of Emzara's outfits.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
They take and kill Tara in front of Noah and Emzara. Noah gets knocked out, and Emzara gets dragged away screaming, and then she wakes up. So, ooh, it was all a dream. Thank the Most High.
No, don't think the Most High. This is what happened. I haven't mentioned it yet because there hasn't been a moment where I was like, the petulant child was excited for T-Rex fight. I was like, okay, so Nama has Tara the baby. It was weird that there was a time skip and then the baby was born, but whatever, you know. I was like, okay, so when I turn the page, Nama is gonna be like, if you want Emzara and your baby back, you need to fight this T-Rex. And then I turn the page, and then Emzara wakes up, and I'm just like, fuck you, Tim and K. Marie.
Yeah.
This was awful. This is like a page-long dream sequence, and like, it's obviously not real, or if it was real, it would be very bad writing, but I was just like, do I get my T-Rex now? And I did not. I did not get my T-Rex.
At least the T-Rex fight didn't happen in a dream. At least that actually happened.
That is true.
That could have been the case.
That is true. Yeah, okay. That makes me feel a little bit better.
I will say, though, the like dream logic in this scene is like very convincingly conveyed. As I was reading it, I was like, this is happening like really weirdly fast, but also this book is kind of weird and uncanny like that. So like, I kind of believed that this could really be happening. But then when it was revealed to be a dream, I was like, oh, okay, that was actually pretty good. Like, it's weird and stilted, and like stuff just happens that's plausible, but it's not very likely. And it's just weird enough. Like, Nama wearing Emzara's dress, like that feels like
she's crazy enough to do that. She has spies.
She's crazy enough to do that, and also like it feels like a little bit like dirty. It's like a little bit like taboo, like a little bit and like that's kind of dreamlike too, you know, where it's like something inside you is being revealed that like you don't want to face.
I don't know. Yeah, no, you're right though. It was very disappointing, that scene. Yeah, she wakes up on the boat. They're still on the boat. Don't worry, guys.
They're still on the boat. Noah and Tubal-Cain have this conversation about the afterlife where like Noah is like, yes, there is. God says so. And Tubal-Cain's like, I'm not really sure about that. And Noah's like, yes, but there is, though. And Tubal-Cain's like, I mean, yeah, it could be, I guess. And Noah's like, there is. And Tubal-Cain's like, oh, yeah, sure, there is. Sounds great. Good talk, buddy.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, and then at the end of that chapter, Emzara miscarries.
Almost more abruptly than the dream sequence this happens.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. They're really laying on the tragedy. Like, a trilogy is supposed to be triumph, tragedy, transcendence, but I think they're really overplaying it. We've lost, like, half of our cast who I care about. Then Emzara loses her child, and they haven't even gotten to Satan City yet. So it feels, again, I'm torn about it, because this is the level of oppressive evil that I wanted from book one, but it's also, like, fatiguing and not effective because of just the suddenness with which it happens.
Yeah, fatiguing and not effective is totally right. Like, we barely got time to really think about Aura and Ater being dead, and then now another character that we care about is like suffering.
Right.
And it like basically just replaces that previous tragedy. And like we never really talk about that again except like twice.
Right.
So like what was the point of that?
I don't know. What's the point of anything?
It was a lateral tragedy move, for sure. Then they actually do arrive at Havil. They don't dock like right at the city. They go a little bit outside, and Tubal-Cain is like, I'm gonna go scout and see if like I can get in safely.
Right.
And like if I get captured, I'll send like a friend back or something. And otherwise I'll be back in a minute.
They're staying in this like hideout, which is Tubal-Cain's like beach house, like the royal beach house. It's very Avatar: The Last Airbender. I wasn't kidding about the Azula thing, but it's also the same thing in like the third season of that show where they hide out in Zuko's little beach house and decide how they're gonna kill the King Fireman.
Not to be that kid who studied abroad one time and then wouldn't shut up about it, but like it feels very American to me. Like the idea that because it's not like the summer palace or like the seaside palace. It's like Ater is like, I have a beach house. Like, my dad owns a beach house. Our family owns a beach house that's, like, a little bit outside the city. And we like to go there on weekends during the summer. And it's like, okay, this feels like upper middle class suburban shit. Like, like we have a second home that, like, we sometimes rent out to friends.
I'm nothing if not American, but it didn't seem unrealistic that a royal family would have a pied-à-terre on the coast.
No, totally not unrealistic. I think it's like partly the language they use to describe it, though. It's like our beach house.
Right, right, okay.
It doesn't super matter anyway, because Noah and Imzara just like hang out there. And then Noah has this bizarrely insensitive moment where while they're waiting for Tubal-Cain to come back, where literally he's like, I have decided that it's time for Imzara to get over the grief of us losing our child. She's not being attentive to my emotional and implicitly sexual needs, so I am going to go talk to her and then she will feel better. And that's exactly what happens.
It's so Rich Shapiro. Like, the enmity felt for Imzara for being sullen after possibly one of the worst tragedies that you could undergo comes out of nowhere, and then Noah finds a way to turn this into Imzara apologizing to him. And she's like, yes, I will stop being a hysterical hormonal woman. I will tend to your emotional needs. I don't understand why we need to do this.
Something majorly misfires in that scene.
Yeah.
It's just callous. The rest of this book is not callous. It has the emotional maturity of like a toddler, but like it isn't mean.
No. So it's weird to me why this is that. And it goes back to the, I would never cheat on you, babe. She's ugly. I mean, she's hot, but she's ugly on the inside. Like, it's almost like a weird Freudian slip on the writer's part. And I'm like wondering like what's being drawn from personal experience here. But
so my guess would be that they like to do these like little Sunday school lessons periodically, whether it's like Noah praying and like having his faith restored, or like Ara passing on some knowledge to Noah, which is emblematic of like how there should be like male mentorship or whatever. I think this is a scene that's supposed to remind the reader that like wives need to like be attentive to their husbands. Yeah. And they just chose like the worst possible circumstances to like cloak that general message in, if that makes sense. It's super weird. And then it's just over because after this awkward talk with Imzara, Tubal-Cain comes back, and he has not brought Garen's family. He has brought Lamech's second wife, Ada. So, she's able to fill in the group with all of these sordid details about Lamech's personal life and history. Basically, he's just, like, not nice. I mean, he's, like, abusive and stuff, but, like, the stuff that she tells us is not like, oh, he's, like, an abusive husband, and he kills people. The things that she says is, like, he's mean, he's manipulative, he's not friendly. And Noah is like, this is smoking gun. We got him now. Ladies and gentlemen, Lamech is so over, canceled in the public mind. Over. So they decide what they're going to do is basically take all this information, go out in public, and make Lamech look silly by telling everybody that he's a big meanie pants. But also in the course of this conversation, the group realizes that Ater was Ada's son. So Ada, Lamech's second wife, was captured in some scene that we didn't see that happened previous even to the events of the first book. Andrew and I are both crossing and uncrossing our hands, trying to make this make sense. She was captured from that same raid that caused Ater to flee and eventually end up in Noah's house.
Right.
She was Ater's mom, and now is Lamech's second wife.
So it's like, so a tear is like Tubal-Cain and Maz sort of kind of brother.
Sort of brotherish, but they never knew each other except for
Right.
like the few times that a tear and Tubal-Cain hang out in the first book.
There's no point to this information or this relationship being there, but it is weird how they're like half brothers or whatever you would call it when there's bigamist.
It feels like the kind of thing you would write if you were the kind of person to be like, small world.
Right. Yeah, I know the world is smaller, but is it really that small? This is like everybody knows each other or is related in some way. I guess if Adam and Eve were in recent memory, it's not that crazy, but it still bothered me.
It's weird. It just doesn't feel right, even if it like logically should make sense. Unbeknownst to Noah, though, Ada and Emzara decide that they are going to sneak into the palace, go on this like espionage mission, and also sneak a venomous snake in a box into Lamech's room and set it free. And Ada is like, Emzara, you have to do it because you're small enough to like fit through this stupid contrived gap between two rooms for some reason. And Ada is like, this will totally work because Lamech always makes a huge deal of it when he enters the room. Even his own bedroom, I can hear him doing it through the walls. So if you release the snake, he won't notice because he'll be so busy gassing himself up as soon as he walks through the door that the snake will strike him on the heel and kill him before anybody can do anything about it.
What is he do? He goes like da 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 every time he opens a door.
He has a theme song that he presses play on his jukebox. So Emzara is about to do it. She's poised to do it. She's in the vents or whatever. And she's in the vents. But she decides not to because God. And then she goes back and tells Noah. And Noah's like, good job, wife. You did the God thing. End of scene.
Good job, wife. Yeah, and that's it. Like, nothing comes of that at all.
No, nothing at all. He doesn't even get mad at Ada, which I would have thought he would have been like, you tempted my wife into sin, foreign woman. Yeah,
that's a good question.
But he doesn't.
Huh, I didn't think about that. Yeah, that's weird.
It is weird,
Whatever.
But it doesn't matter because that's the end of it. Okay, so then Noah goes and gets more NPCs to add to our little hub that we're building here. He goes and gets Garen Logon's family, which unexpectedly includes a runaway slave who is able to give us some insight into what's been going on in the Nakash cult since Noah was last in Havil. So they are on the verge of introducing sex slavery as an official practice, which they're about to unveil at a celebration that is a scene in just a second. So the slave girl is like, yeah, I was being groomed to be like a sex slave to give people snake magic, essentially. And everyone is like, these Havilites sure are wicked. This is a wicked bad thing to do. And it's like, yes, of course it is. But like you were saying earlier, Andrew, it's like, I don't know. It's like, it reminds me honestly a lot of how Isla in Skyshade was like, I'm going to go kill these like serial prostitute abusers because it's like, it seems like a thing that like the reader couldn't possibly have an issue with. So it's like, it's like lazy in a way. It's like, yeah, of course it's bad for there to be like sex slavery, but like to use that as the crux of like the Havilites' evil just feels so, I don't know, uninteresting. It's like, okay, like, yeah, they're evil.
There's no like way you could apply this to real life because no one being taken seriously in the conversation of the modern age is like, hey, we need more child prostitutes in our Satan churches. But
it has no texture. Like, it's just, black and white.
Yeah, it's weird. It works very well to like establish an emotional connection because there's like the luridness of it, I guess, is a factor there. But it's so nakedly manipulative. There's this crazy thing you can do in rhetoric where you can appeal to the safety of children to manipulate people. And if you want to make people believe what you want, you will say, not doing this thing will endanger children. This is a thing that people do all the time, and it's always so obvious. And it's even more obvious in stupid YA fantasy with Pachycephalosaurus running around and Imzara draws them to therapize herself.
It's like you said, this book is nakedly meant to be applied to the real world. Like, it's truly allegorical, even though it's retelling a Bible story. And we are meant, as the readers, to be able to apply Havil to group that we don't like, which in this case is, like, non-Christians. So basically what it's arguing is that, like, other religions are magic files. And that's why I call it lazy, because it's like, well, of course you're going to get people upset at other religions if they read and believe that other religions are magic files. It's like straw manning, kind of. Right. But it's like, you can't apply that to the real world if you're an honest actor, because like other religions are not magic files. There might be a magic religion out there. I'm not ruling it out, but like most religions are not.
Right. Our major Abrahamic religions.
I'm like, so what?
Right.
This isn't how real life works.
Right.
So she tells them about the magic snake worship sex stuff. And then through a series of like, can I get the door for you, ma'am? Let me take your hat, sir. We eventually learn that she is Ater's sister, because she also fled from that same raid that Ater's mom, Ada, and Ater himself did. So now we have Ater's mom and Ater's sister in the room, and they're kind of like emotionally meant to be replacements for Ater. At least that's how they're set up. Like, Noah has this moment where he's like, it's like Ater's back with us again.
But in 2 girl form.
Yeah, girl form. But then they don't talk to them anymore, so it's like, then they go to this big festival. Initially, Tubal-Cain, Noah, and Imzara are planning some permutation of, we interrupt things, get up on stage, and tell everybody that Lamech is a big doo-doo head. But then they get there, and Lamech is giving this totally wicked speech, wicked/neg, and Nama is there, and she's also like, I'm even more evil since the last time you saw me.
Right.
And then there's an eruption, like a nearby volcano erupts, and it like destroys part of the city. Everybody's running. For a minute, they think Tubal-Cain is dead because he was up on a ledge getting ready to denounce his dad, and the ledge cracked in half. But he's okay. He's okay. They all get out. This was a moment where I think Imzara had like a slightly more agency, because there's a part of them running away where she's kind of leading for like a second that I clocked. And I was like, oh, okay, this is nice. This is different.
It's so frustrating because this only happens in the action scenes. Again, it's like a Princess Leia thing where she's the girl one, but whenever something happens that is just transitional, like these action scenes are always getting from point A to point B, she has this little furtive, like, leading the charge moments, but then she'll go back to gravitating to whatever daddy like a polar magnet, like, every single time. Like,
are you saying you have an issue with women who transition, Andrew?
I have an issue with women who are not girl bosses, I guess. I don't care whether you transition. I just want you to be a girl boss no matter what you do. That's my hope for womankind.
This book badly needs like a female prophet or seer. Like what's the evil pope who facilitates Grim and Isla's wedding, who's like the prophet follower? Ida. This book needs an Ida to go along with the seer. We need like a succession of prognosticators. I think that would tie it together.
That would fix everything.
Specifically female prognosticators. Yeah, so they're running away, and at this point in the book, I was like, where are we going from here? Right. Like, what is going to happen now? Like, Havil is like in chaos. They're all running away. People are screaming, presumably being burned to death by magma. And then the book does this. So, for the second time in as many installments in the Noahverse, our characters are fleeing Havil in terror for their lives, and they just get away. Like, they just leave. And then, it's not just that, but there's a time skip. And Andrew, how long is that time skip?
450 years go by. In the turn of a page, we have just left Satan City after a volcanic eruption. Nothing interesting has happened for 450 years. The Earth has revolved around the sun 450 times, and nothing has occurred.
Well, I hate to tell you where you're wrong, Andrew, but it's not nothing. See, in the intervening time, our characters have gotten on quite a bit. Noah's business has really grown. He's now ambiguously shipbuilder master / dock master guy in charge of the ports, ?
And wealthy therefrom.
Gets
a lot of money from that. Pika, I mean.
He's buddy-buddy with higher-ups in the city. He's been on the town council a couple of times, making him one of the most eminent daddies around. He's beloved by all, except for those by whomst he is behated. For you see, Andrew, as Iri Geshem has grown, so too has the wickedness of its heart. And nowadays, the city is just, I don't know, it's not doing so good. The council is full mostly of people whose only defining trait is that they aren't Godites. The youths aren't following God anymore, about which Noah is very distraught. Some of his friends' grandchildren, of which there are dozens, if not hundreds, because everyone is 450 years older and they've been having kids this whole time, are marrying people who aren't super interested in following the commands of the Most High. And Noah, being a known Christian, is starting to feel very unsafe in this town that was once his. Let me be clear, nothing remotely bad has ever happened to him in his entire life, at least not since his wife miscarried. He's been chilling this entire time.
But hold on, he has been chilling, but the world has materially changed for the worse beyond just more people worship the snake gods now. When he goes to the town center, which he doesn't like to do anymore because there's all of these homeless encampments and drunken brawls.
There's so much crime.
There's so much crime in the city. Someone should call Night Stalker to resurrect some zombies to stop all this crime.
We need the Heart Ripper.
Ripper. Ooh, Heart Ripper arc. That would be good. Anyways, so like, I mean, it's kind of just like, I don't know, it's like walking down the streets of LA, but it is materially worse than we started with.
Yeah.
So it gave me something.
It's worse, but Noah attributes it all to like people liking God less, and he's very curmudgeonly and on his high horse about it. And like nothing bad has happened to him, but he feels persecuted. So Noah feels unsafe, and he is kind of like got one foot out the door a little bit. And he has like another moment where he doubts God, but then that's immediately supplanted by him deciding, okay, I'm going to go out on like a wilderness retreat by myself and try to figure out what is going on.
Right.
He has no character goal. Like, don't misconstrue this as him being a character in a narrative universe that's interested in advancing the plot. He's like, I don't know what to do with my life.
Right.
So I'm going to go pray. Which is what he does. He goes to pray. And then God, like actual God, comes down as a pillar of flame and is like, hey, Noah, I'm real. Everything Enoch told you about me was true. And I am going to kill everybody. Except for you, your wife, some animals, and your kids and their wives.
Right.
So Noah's like, what? And God's like, don't worry about it. I'll tell you. I'll send a follow-up email. And then he's like, see ya, and he's gone. And the main thing that Noah takes away from this is, oh great, I get to have kids finally.
Right, because they haven't had kids in 450 years, and this weighs heavily on Imzara's heart, and also Noah's, but Imzara has taken it worse, I suppose. Noah here, and I realize that he is a dedicated Godite, but Noah hears, your friends are going to die. Tubal-Cain is still alive. He's still God-fearing. He has a wife and...
He's married?
He's married. He's got some children. Garen is still around. The God-fearing guard is still around. Presumably, like, all of his little friends, other than Ater and Ara, who died in the first part, are still around. So he's not like, I won't like it when they die. He's like, I get to have children now because God said so.
It's so frustrating, and there's even a moment where he like starts to think about that, and he's asking God like, so does that mean all my like friends are gonna die too? And God answers in the most male manipulator way. Oh, don't you think that what I do is right though? Don't you trust me to do what's right? And Noah's like, yes, and God's like, yeah. So why are you asking? And then, like, he and Imzara have, like, half a conversation about it later, but they conclude the same place. They're like, God will do the right thing.
Yep.
So we're not going to tell anybody about this.
Right. And he comes home, and Imzara has this whole surprise party with all of his little friends who have all aged 450 years, and we don't really learn anything about, like, well, we learn, like, what they were doing. Like, Tubal-Cain was blacksmithing, and Imzara was being a stay-at-home wife. But, like,
Shocker.
Nothing occurred. They weren't, like, beset by agents of Nama sent to kidnap Imzara, which I, again, thought would be the entire plot of this book. And they didn't fight any dinosaurs. Not that I'm mad about that or anything. But they've just f***ed around for 450 years, and Noah's like, these people will be dead soon. Wonder how that's gonna happen.
Yeah, I don't know what to say. That sums it up really well.
That's it. That's all there is.
This book presupposes a world full of such dull people, man.
Yeah.
Like, not only is that reaction of Noah, like, as dull as it is sociopathic, but the fact that all these characters just, like, have been doing their job for 450 years and nothing. Like, nobody's like, I got really into handcrafting artisanal kites. And now I make kites and give them out to the children.
Right.
Like, that would have been cool. Like, I don't know. Like, do these people have passions, or do they just sit around and blacksmith all day?
Right. Again, the elasticity of time, but you could have told me this time skip was like 2 months and I would have bought it. Like it did not feel like 450 years.
And it's just weird. Like, where have Lamech and Nama been this whole time?
Reading.
Like, they've been reading. They've been getting brainwashed at the woke universities. Okay, so things really, really move fast here in the end game, which is where we have finally arrived. Imzara confirmed pregnant.
Yes.
Their first kid's on the way. Noah takes this as confirmation that everything God said is true, and that they are going to have to build an ark at some point.
Right.
He starts thinking about how he's going to do it, building a scale model first, and then tackling the whole thing. But until he gets, like, the exact measurements from God, he's like, I'm just going to chill on it. So then, like at the beginning, Lamech shows up. He just arrives on their doorstep, apropos of nothing, and is like, I'm here now, and the council is going to add me to it, but, like, actually make me king.
Right.
And Noah's like, oh my creator, everybody on the council is evil now.
Right.
Lamech is definitely going to be elected daddy of daddies. 2 of the council members just so happen to be the last 2 God-following ones show up dead.
Right.
And Noah's like, double yikes, now he's definitely going to be king. And then he gets knocked out and captured, and he's taken to a cell with Tubal-Cain.
So Noah gets dragged out by this guy who is a giant. And this is really weird to me because Noah's like, I've heard about giants before, but I always thought it was an exaggeration of just, like, really tall people. But this guy's like, what did he say, like 6 cubits or something ridiculously tall. And I think a cubit is, like, roughly analogous to a meter. So this, like, I don't know, 18-foot tall dude is just like, I want to eat you, but this is going to happen first. And then they do the whole same song and dance thing with Tubal-Cain, where they're like, bow before the serpent Nakash, or we will kill you, and we will also kill all of the people from the hub level in the beginning. And they drag out the child, and they drag out Garen and his wife,
Ada.
Yeah. A lot of people are in this scene, and none of them really matter. Some of them die, some of them don't. Anyways, he's like, no, I will never bow before the snake, and it will be you killing them, not me. I will stand by my morals. The group of victims is, like, really okay with this. They're like, don't give in, stand for the creator. And Lamech and Nama are like, well, if you can't convert, then we'll just kill you. And then they release the Tyrannosaurus Rex. Let's go.
Finally.
There's 20 pages left in this book. I finally get my T-Rex, and I'm so disappointed because the T-Rex ignores Noah instantly and starts attacking like the onlookers because they're in this converted theater that used to be like for plays, but then they turned it into an arena. So it's not meant to house a T-Rex fight. So the T-Rex just like slaps his tail and like makes people fall and eat them, and it's like pandemonium ensues. The giant is still there, and he has this spear, and he drives it through the girl. Well, she's I guess a woman now because it's been 450 years, but drives it through the child of Ada, and other people end up dying in the chaos. But who survives this? I think Garen and Noah and maybe like one of their wives or something. Imzara's escaped.
Imzara's definitely alive.
Yeah, Imzara's escaped somewhere.
We don't know if Lamech and Nama are still alive, but like obviously we do know,
Right.
but like we don't know ostensibly.
Right, so the T-Rex is just going to town. There's never a point where Noah actually fights the T-Rex, and I'm so sad about it. And the T-Rex doesn't even do anything interesting. He, like, steps on the giant, killing him instantly. And I don't know. It's just... all this buildup was for nothing. But our surviving heroes escape in the chaos. They try to boat away, sail away, but then they get, like, fire arrowed into oblivion and try to escape on foot. They end up in this forest.
Well, there's a series of tunnels under the palace that they just happen to ask about.
Right, there's a series of tunnels under the palace. Yes, they escape through a series of tunnels into the forest where they are captured by the army of Nod, which is like this off-screen, like semi-antagonistic entity that has been accused of many horrible things in the past, or is just not a good place.
I got the impression that like that was implying that the soldiers of Nod were like on Irigashem's doorstep. Like coincidentally, they were getting ready to invade at the same time all this was happening.
Right.
And that's where it ends.
And that's the book.
They get captured.
The dinosaurs are just still wreaking havoc. Imzara's off somewhere else. Noah and Garen have been captured. And Nama, her entire character arc was just, she got the side of her head shaved. So she looks like alternative and slightly more evil than she was before. And thus ends Noah, Man of Resolve.
I feel like my brain was dissolved by reading this.
Tubal-Cain scratched behind his ear.
Do you think we'll ever see them again?
Those hills?
No.
Tubal-Cain shook his head.
A tear in aura.
Noah's smile disappeared.
I mean, do you think there's more than this?
The blacksmith waved his arm from left to right, indicating the whole world. Noah watched the mildly undulating water distort his long, early morning shadow, enjoying the light, cool breeze as it passed through his unkempt hair. He sighed and stretched a hand out toward Tubal-Cain. What do you think?
Well, that's a very complicated question.
I believe that we are here implies to some degree. I used to be able to do the whole thing.
I'd like to assume there's something after this life. Some of the older people in our city say we were made from the ground, just like the people of Irigashem believe. But they say we return to the ground, and that's it.
They think the person just ceases to exist? Noah asked.
Some of them do.
That might explain why so many people in your city live the way they do. Furrowing his brow, Tubal-Cain asked,
What do you mean?
Well, think about it. If this life is all we have, if there's nothing after it, then you may as well live however you want. Seek pleasure and power instead of serving the Creator and helping others.
I could see what you're saying, but I think you're overstating it a bit.
All right, Andrew. That was a pretty fun summary. Like you said, a little snackier than it usually is. Let's kick things off with some good stuff next. Got anything?
This is a little thing, but there is one line that I thought was genuinely very funny, and it's just nice to have with this like weird juvenile, slightly mean story. There's this part where it's in the TFLD in the beginning, and they're trying to play matchmaker for a tear, and they just like list random villagers, and one villager comes up, and a tear is like, she's probably 600. And I just thought that was funny. You know, it's true in the diegesis of the story, probably, but it's also like funny as a hyperbole. It's a fun little like reference to the time. It's like it felt like a fun little wink from the authors saying, hey, it is kind of weird, but this is how it's relatable to you. And I don't know, that little moment of humanity is an example of TFLD done well, where, you know, at least we're like kind of learning about the world, or at least the village. I don't like it, but I liked that line.
Yeah, that's a good line. It's like a nice moment where it's a joke that makes sense in the diegesis and in the real world, and they took the opportunity to like make that happen, which is it's attentive to their story, which is nice.
Yeah.
Okay, please don't like cancel me for saying this.
God.
Because Noah is such a bad husband in this book, like when he gets her to apologize for like being moody about her dead child. But there's like a lot of other moments in the book where like they just seem like nice and cozy and domestic. And like I kind of like that in a way. I'm like, okay, if this is fiction that's meant to give me some escape from reality, then like this is a little bit sweet.
Yeah.
Like it's nice to see like a straight couple that actually likes each other represented in media, and they're not like weird and toxic like Isla and Grimm or Dex and Andy.
Yeah. And I agree with you, and hearing it articulated that way makes me wonder if maybe we're a little bit too hard on the whole Noah's reaction to losing the baby thing. Like, the narrative does not explore this, so this is all speculation on my part, but it like, we all have toxic moments or whatever. I am sure, like, even if we haven't undergone this level of tragedy that Noah has, we have been uncharitable to our significant others, and we have demanded things of them that is unfair, and we've had Rich Shapiro moments here and there. And it's the only time where, like, they don't seem to be completely on the same page. And I don't love it. I'm arguing with myself. I don't love it because it's so patriarchal, but I do love it because they're both down for it. And I'm kind of like, as long as you're okay with it, you can do it however you want kind of person. So it didn't make me uncomfortable in that regard, other than this one slip up that Noah did. And if maybe what I wanted was for Noah to apologize. I think I literally wrote, like, in my notes, apologize to her, just be like, you know, like she just falls on her knees and is like, I'm so sorry for being sullen after losing the baby. I'll be better next time. And I was like,
I'll be better. And I'll hug you more.
And I can see this happening, but I'd also want Tim and K. Marie to be like winking at us like, hey, this is not how a married couple should act in a moment like this, or have Noah and her grow from it, or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, if it's going to be a teachable moment, like, it would be nice if we learned something other than just like return to the default position, which is woman should comfort man in marriage, which is so dull. And I don't know, like, even if you're a Christian, then like this is not new to you. Like, wouldn't you at least like to like hear something new? You know, like, you already know this, so what's the point of just packaging it in like a bizarrely loaded story? I
don't know why they did it, but we'll save that for some other time. I think there could have been more of it, and we've made oblique references to this already, and I don't think you'll agree with me, Jay. But I did like the moral decay of Eerie Geshem, like, after the 450-year time skip. It's not in your face, it's not particularly compelling, but I never thought that it would be. Remember in the first episode that we did for Noah, where I was like, things are not where they are for the world to be flooded. There's nice little elves running around, and everyone's super happy and loves the creator so much. I liked seeing Eerie Geshem where, like, all the little elves are like sleeping in tents and stabbing each other at night now. Like, it feels like it feels like that part in Hollow Knight, how the first level, when you're right about to beat the game, it like gets super infected and gross, and this area that you've spent so much time in has like become more like decayed, and it was harrowing for what it was. I don't think it would have ever been particularly shocking for the kind of book that it is. And I thought it was perfectly serviceable. Yeah,
it's fine as a plot point. I don't like it rhetorically, but like it works for what it is within the context of the structure of the story.
I don't have anything smart to say about this necessarily, but I do want to reiterate how emotionally invested I was able to get in this book. It is I have to do a lot of soul searching for like how genuinely like the most unironic fun I have reading a book is probably one of our more objectively evil English Club podcast books, where like I don't know, like young earth creationism, like believing the world is 6,000 years old doesn't necessarily hurt you beyond like being false, but like it's a gateway to like more problematic things. So it's like it's this very weird
comorbid
midpoint. But at the same time, I really get into these. I really like how this just feels like a kid's first YA fantasy novel, where like we're going on these swashbuckling adventures with dinosaurs and like having fights with evil princesses, and it's like it's really cool. And the stakes that they were able to establish with Lamech and his whole thing, it's a very like schoolyard bully. Like, he has all the power, you have none of the power. You said it earlier, it's cheap, it's easy, this is not particularly advanced, and it's kind of downright manipulative, but damn if it doesn't work. Like, we glossed over it because of how like complex and annoying and stupid it was, but the gladiator fight scenes, I was like genuinely into seeing Tubal-Cain standing up and Noah like refusing to back down, and like the conflict that they faced where like Tubal-Cain's wife was in danger, but she was like, you need to stick to your morals. This is about a higher thing than just our lives. Like, I got so wrapped up in that, and I'm kicking myself for being so emotionally manipulated, but I still liked it, you know?
Yeah, but like fundamentally it's like a moment in the story where like the characters have the chance, or the characters like are tested on like the beliefs that they've been espousing for the entire time. So like you kind of have all this like build up of like, ooh, are they really, when the fire is like put on underneath them, like is that going to stand true?
Right.
There's like actual tension in those moments, whereas like in the moments where they're sitting around in somebody's living room offering each other water, like there's nothing to that. Like, so I can get how you like get manipulated by it a little bit. And I also think something that like I'm susceptible to on the level of manipulation, but that's also kind of just like a compliment of the book, is like the prose is quite polished, and it feels like Rich Shapiro in the sense that it has like a nice production quality. It's like clearly been looked over. People have probably made sure that it's like consistent with the first book, and like
it's a book,
stuff that, you know, Lightlark didn't get. And it like, I don't know, there's very few sentences that I have to stop and reread because I didn't understand what was happening. Lightlark, like it all fits together like a book, which is like not something you can take for granted anymore after you do this podcast for a few years.
I guess we are incredibly biased with our positive response to this book, but yeah, it has the clearest vision. Everything about its language seems tailored around a central voice, a central vision. This is a work of fiction that was set out to accomplish something, and you can read it, interpret it, and form opinions on it. It has all the parts that create a book that is good. And again, that's very stupid and it's very simple, but it's not something we can say about a lot of books that we've read for this podcast.
And I think it helps to say it out loud, because like there's probably somebody out there listening to this that's like, that like really clicks with what I've been struggling with in my own novel right now. I mean, more than anything, it's like that it has a clear mission and vision, like you said, which it also has in common with Rich Shapiro and not with Lightlark. Like, I know exactly what these authors want me to come away from this book believing, and they clearly knew exactly what they wanted to communicate. It's like overly simplistically done, and I think the message itself is like ultimately a bad one. But like, I get it. I understand.
I mean, it's like, this is just a teenager's Veggie Tales. It's not particularly complex or nuanced or good, but it's there.
It's there. It sure is there. And not only does it have a clear vision, but I could tell that Kay, Marie, and Tim like actually are invested in this world. Like, as much as they tell you repeatedly, both in the intro and in the outro, that this is not their real beliefs about the Bible, this is not the Bible, this is just like one hypothetical situation, this is how it could have been, it's a little bit of like a Marvel what if type of deal. You can tell that they can't help but like enjoy living in this reality. Like, there's that moment where Emzara is drawing the dinosaurs and she's like, that's how I feel when I smack my head against the world. And it's like, yeah, like that's a real human moment that like doesn't have to be in there if we're just retelling a Bible story. Like, Emzara doesn't really have to be a character, but like I think that they actually like these characters and like inhabiting them and writing about and as them.
And that's infectious.
I think that comes through.
Yeah, it's and speaking of characters that we like just to be around, Nama elevates every scene she's in. This book's greatest tragedy is that her POV was really, really limited, but like the book could be and have all the same morals. The book could be entirely from Nama's perspective, having Noah as a side character, and that's our parable, is like the dark inverse parable, because she's this woman who has grown up in this intensely patriarchal society with a king daddy who throws women around like nothing. And she is trying in her own way to find agency, to find power in this paradigm. She doesn't want to side with the creator. She wants things on her own terms. And, you know, you can argue about whether or not that's something that, like, you would agree with, but I can see how Tim and K. Marie would want to play with that. So she gravitates to these manipulative people like the seer and the Nakash worshippers and sees this as a way out, when really it's just another daddy. And to have this play out like a tragedy would be really cool. So like, and we have it, but it's very in the background, and there's a lot of 450-year time skips that don't properly give context to her development. All she does in 450 years is shave the side of her head. Like, there's nothing there, and there's no implicit development beside her just getting more invested in snake worship. But her internal narration is full of doubt. She feels like this weird stirring in her watching Tubal-Cain get attacked by a Smilodon, and there's so much buried in that character that I just, like, I want it to be exhumed. And I think I want to frame that as a good thing, because maybe in book 3 there's a whole lot more with her. But like, I the fact that it's there is really cool.
She's the means by which, like, basically anything interesting in the story happens. Because in that moment where she's like, I didn't want Tubal-Cain to die, even though he was publicly shaming my father. And technically what my dad did was the right thing to do because it allows him to hang on to power, but I will never forgive him for what he did. And furthermore, I'm going to take him out. I'm going to take him out, and I'm finally going to become the ruler of Havil. Like, I love that there's like some inter-villain drama happening there. I love that, like, we actually get to see somebody's interior world being activated. Like, some people are planning things. And I like that it's like a nuanced thing. She's like, I get that he did what he had to do, and I'll never forgive him for it. And like, sometimes that's just how it is. Like, I don't know, that feels emotionally real to me. And I think another reason that, like, maybe is a little bit more meta that all of the Nama chapters are so fun is I think Tim and K. Marie like to be a little bad. I think they like being a little bit naughty. I think that they enjoy it. They can't help but enjoy it. They like writing this little evil lady.
Right.
But then they have to stop themselves because they're worried that if they dwell too much on the wickedness, you know, they'll let it in. They can't let themselves have too much fun now, you know. They're like Baptists drinking only when they're alone because they don't want anybody else to see it.
Right.
So it's like, you know, like, I think that they're having a good time.
But I think of the didactic aspect of this. I'm getting way ahead of ourselves here, but like, I want to say this now while it's top of mind. So you are sitting in the corner of the youth group room, typing out horrible YA fantasy in your iPod Touch. No one in the youth group likes you, and Fedora atheism starts to become a more and more attractive opportunity, because this group of people who's following the creator seems a little bit not on your wavelength. So there's just this rift that grows and grows and grows, and you get edgy about it, and you get emotional about it, and you start to read books that you shouldn't. And if Brad, the youth pastor, were to hand that kid a book about this evil princess who used to follow the creator, but learned about this new power that she can get from her own self, only to realize that it was actually secretly a new daddy and not the right way to find transcendence, that would be so compelling. Like, and again, like, this is a horrible podcast, is because we're like trying to educate these people how to make better Christian propaganda, but like, that would be so convincing. That story would be so much more compelling and so much more effective to bring people back to Christianity than May I Take Your Hat, Sir, and Sometimes Babies Die, the novel. Like, I don't understand. I don't understand why we had to see this. Like, talk about Tim and K. Marie in the foreword said that, you know, this isn't the Bible. We're not adding things to scripture. This is a long form parable. Okay, fine, great. But it seems too tied to scripture to be a parable because we're stuck in Noah's perspective all the time.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if part of the reason they don't take the route of framing this story being about like Nama rejecting God and then realizing and rejecting God and serving Nakash that she's just traded one daddy for another is because it like implicitly suggests that A, God is a daddy that can be traded away, and B, that God is in any way equivalent to Nakash, right? Because like they'd be sort of tacitly admitting that like you're f***ed either way. Like it would be a bit doomer.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying there's not a way to massage that into something that is ultimately Christian. I think it would depend on like how it ends probably a lot. But I wonder if that's why that they haven't fully taken that route.
I don't know. There's just the potential is just so compelling to me. Like apologism through Azula.
Yeah. No, I see the vision. I definitely do. I think the reverse psychology of it would be really effective to somebody who's like an edgy teen with one foot outside of church and one foot in it.
Right. I don't know. Think about that one.
Maybe for the sequel. The sequel series, which will be about Ham. Hey, Andrew, I'm going to need you to insert like a little alarm sound effect here. Hey, wait. Do you hear that?
Is that the fire alarm?
Yeah. Yeah, that is the quiz alarm. You're absolutely right.
No.
Okay, so I have got some animal and plant names from the world of Noah, man of redemption. And let's see how many you can get right, okay?
God. Okay, all right.
I'll start you out with a softball. Bovar.
Cow.
Okay, cow, yeah. Super glider.
Pterodactyl.
Vine fruit.
Grape?
Good question. I don't know.
Okay.
Because they just mentioned that it exists. It's just a fruit on a vine.
I think it's a grape.
Bleeders.
Bats?
It's goats.
Goat? Oh, bleaters.
Goats.
Yeah. Okay,
yeah.
If you had enunciated correctly, I would have.
Good lord.
If you had enunciated correctly,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I have a flap. I won't let it happen again. It's just my. What part of linguistics is that?
Orthography. No.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's just my orthography. Buzzbird.
Hummingbird?
Yeah, ding, 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 you got it. All right, one more. Mimic bird.
Mockingbird.
I think so. I actually don't know either, because like they just mentioned that it's a bird that like mimics things, so could be a parrot, I guess, maybe.
Oh, shit, yeah. God, there's so many birds that mimic things. Maybe it's a parrot, because it's like a tropical thing.
It could be a starling, too, technically, but I don't know if they know that deep bird lore.
I don't think they know that.
Good game.
Well, what about all the dinosaurs? The dinosaurs' names were like unpronounceable. There was like a Rivlock.
Oh yeah, like Pithoct.
Pithoct. Yeah, it was weird. Talk about orthography. Like it was like I don't know how I'm supposed to parse some of this.
Yeah, and it's weird that they sound like so different from the like mammal and like normal animal names.
Right, because like
they get much more brutal.
I wouldn't like it, but I would forgive like a Latin-y nomenclature, which we already have through Bovar, and I think cats are called Calyx or something like that. I don't know.
I think they should just do Spanish.
They should just do Spanish. Oh no! But what I mean is, if we had just like gone across the board and have it sounded like dog Latin or something, I think it would have been forgivable by some people. I still would have hated it, but it would have been better than Rinthocht.
So far, our track record on fictional animal names is a little spotty, I think. We're okay with Darowax, but then not okay with the inconsistency of the animal names here.
Well, the difference is I know how to pronounce Darowack. I don't like Milknut. Milknut came up a lot for a word that sounds that terrible.
I think they knew what they were up to. I think that was something slipping in. Something untoward.
Ew. No, please don't tell me that. You can be Ara, because I want to hear you say this.
Okay.
Ara's shoulder and arm muscles flexed as he strained to pull the recently secured beam out of position. Shifting his stance, he grunted as he pushed against the wood. Finally giving up, he sat down on the deck and looked at his son-in-law. These new bracket... Oh wait, that's you. Sorry.
These new brackets from Tubal Cain are much better. The joints are as strong as a super glider's bite.
Noah nodded, eyebrows raised. Didn't I tell you that? Ara stretched his fingers before curling his arm up to show off his bicep.
You did, but they needed to be tested by a strong man.
A big, strong man.
I'm such a big, strong man, Noah.
Andrew, I'm going to lead us off into this section with something that I think we kind of brushed aside in the first book, but to me became more and more urgent as this one like wore on, and especially as it became like narratively important that characters are drifting away from the faith. What teachings are they following? Because there was like an absence of a unified text in the first book that I remember being bothered by, because I was like, it's already been a couple hundred years since God directly spoke to people. So presumably people are just recalling information that others have told them about how to live. And it seems like the thing that separated people, like religious groups, from one another was just whether they chose to follow this set of teachings or not. There was no sense of like some people had just misremembered things or some people had interpreted things differently. It was just, do you follow God or don't you follow God?
Right.
And like as we add additional hundreds of years into the timeline, it becomes less and less plausible to me that the Godites, the most high heads, are like able to recall in its totality everything that they're supposed to be doing, like without writing any of it down. There's no mention of a book or a scroll or anything. And I get why there can't be, because they're worried about, they have to introduce in the afterword that Moses is the one they believe who wrote the entirety of the Old Testament.
Right.
So like, yeah, no one can have written an older version because that would be heretical. But I don't know, like, it's just like, I don't buy it anymore. Like, I really have trouble following this.
Well, I agree with you, but to play the Nikesh's advocate, how complex are Goditism's teachings?
That's a good question.
Have one wife, adhere rigidly to a patriarchal structure, which you never disobey.
Don't murder.
Don't steal. Don't covet your neighbor's wife. Don't eat meat.
Is there anything else?
Meat eating didn't come up this book, but it was in the last book.
When you die, you go to heaven.
When you die, you go to heaven. I feel like the utility in real life, the utility of this rigid patriarchal structures is where those teachings don't have to be teachings. They're in the fabric of the very society. So I don't have an answer for you.
It's just like, even if the teachings are that simple, like imagine a scenario where two people walk into a room and one comes out and the other one is dead inside. Like, was it murder? We don't know. Like, was it self-defense? Can there be such a thing as self-defense? God said not to murder, but like, what if the guy who survived is the one who was attacked, and then in defending himself, he killed the other guy, and we don't even know.
Right.
And I feel like an ostensibly simple like religious formula would still create rise for like those kinds of those situations, right? And then people would splinter off into sects depending on how they feel about like the most pertinent issues. So like there needs to be something, I think, in world for this to make sense, because otherwise we just have to take it on word that everybody who's good remembers verbatim everything.
I think they just didn't have time to sit down and explain any of this to us, because we keep jumping back and forth from Satan City. So we know...
Yeah, they didn't have time. There was too much nothing happening for 450 years.
Everything gets defined in the negative. We know what we don't like. And we barely know what we don't like, because we don't like quote-unquote immorality and quote-unquote not following the creator's ways. It's kind of circular in that regard.
Don't be homeless.
Because
that makes Noah uncomfortable, which is a problem.
Which is a problem for Noah. I would like to start out by saying that two things in this book, well, a lot of things in this book, but two things jump out to me specifically as being completely unforgivable. Imzara's dream is narratively completely unforgivable. It is too long. It's too realistic. It's too interesting. That's what I don't like, is I was like really into it. I was like, hell yeah, we're gonna save the baby and Imzara and fight T-Rexes along the way, only for Imzara to wake up back on the boat, yanking us back in the timeline to a ridiculous degree. And it's terrible. If you need a like portentous dream, make it a paragraph and make it obvious that Imzara is dreaming from the beginning. Well, it was obvious that Imzara was dreaming from the beginning, but like they dragged it on for too long to where you started to forget how weird it was. So
they just it's just there for like cheap tension. Like they realize that nothing's happened for too long in the book, and like so for pacing reasons, they try to squeeze out some momentary intrigue that then you can completely forget about.
And I don't know why we didn't just commit to it, and then we could have Terra die some other way. Maybe we didn't want to have that. I could see how that would be too much for this book, but I just really don't like it. And speaking of this era of the book, Imzara, the whole handling of Imzara losing her child is unforgivable.
Yeah.
I can defend it and saying like Noah was not on his A game. Like it's realistic that something like this may happen to an otherwise good-natured person, but you cannot do this at the 25% mark, introduce your heroes losing their child and presenting it as a speed bump. That I don't mean to be all like moral about it, but like you cannot do that. I'm sorry.
Yeah. It needs to be treated with the gravity that it like deserves.
Yeah, and saying, "Oh, we never forgot about her," is not sufficient in the slightest. It's almost nauseating, the callousness it's handled with.
I know, for somebody who like just really wants to have kids, Noah, like the minute that this kid is dead, Noah's like, okay, well that's over now. Like forget about it. Like, and now on to like trying to have kids again. Like, where's the sense of, like, we were so close and now this thing that I wanted is taken from me?
Right. If you had to do it, it should have at least permeated more of the book, and it does not. I don't have anything else to say about it, so I won't belabor the point. Just don't do that, please.
Just don't do that. Speaking of things that I could have gone without, was like a tear being murdered. Like, I had never thought of this phrase before until last episode when you said that Ren dying was a waste of a character. Because when a tear died, I was like, yeah, that's a good phrase. Like, this is a waste of a character. This guy is like our comic relief. He's generally pleasant. He's somebody who like occasionally causes Noah to like rethink his faith, which the book always spirals into like a Sunday school lesson, but it doesn't have to. It doesn't have to. There could be a version of this where their conversations are interesting. So I'm going to presume that for the purposes of this critique.
Right.
And a tear being killed, it just sucks. And then what sucks even more is that they just replace him with Tubal Cain.
Right.
Like, Tubal Cain is now the guy who asks Noah Sunday school questions. Tubal Cain is now the guy who fondly reminisces about other characters.
Right.
He's like the big, strong, burly man who can be Noah's physical rival whenever they joke about, I don't know, like doing sports or something. And that just makes you realize how interchangeable these two characters were the whole time. Like, if it was really that easy to just ditch one and like go all in on the other,
right,
that makes me feel kind of cheated back in book one when I actually like cared about a tear. Like, now I feel stupid for caring because apparently he didn't matter.
Freaking died. Yeah, I have a lot to say about this. I'm glad you brought this up. This ties into a suggestion that I would have for Tim and K. Marie. One, don't kill a tear. Two, so we're after the 450-year time skip. God says, everyone but you and your family and animals that I choose will die. That's going to happen, and this is a foregone conclusion. Noah, idly and a bit callously, just kind of wonders to himself, oh, it'll be weird seeing all of my friends die, but oh well. But there's a second option that is not touched on for what would justify them being flooded, and that would be turning away from the creator. And and I'm a little bit biased because this was one of our big suggestions for Noah, is to have Ater's character arc be reversed to where he grows away from the creator. But again, I must reiterate that we don't see the power of temptation firsthand. We see it when all the Keebler elves become homeless miscreants, but we don't see like a named character whom we love be like, hey, I thought it out and I like Nakash more than I like the creator. It would be too obvious if you did this to Tubal-Cain. I don't hate Tubal-Cain's character in this book, but it's just like he was already the prince of Satan Town, so to have him just go back to that would be too obvious and too cheap. So I'm okay with the replacement happening, but I'm not cool with the off-screen murder of a tear that gets resolved in one boring funeral chapter. I don't think they handled that correctly.
This is extra frustrating to me because there is a moment where they gesture in the direction of what you're suggesting, like the suggestion that we have a character like regress, but for reasons that to them feel justifiable in like choosing Nakash over God. We have Ashur, who went with them, I believe, on the first trip to Havil, and he runs an inn in Iri Geshem, and they mention when he is the one who volunteers to give Lamech a place to stay the first time he visits, they mention like, oh, Ashur, like, sure doesn't really seem that dedicated to God.
Yeah.
Like, he's always been a little bit too greedy. And everyone just is like, yeah, that's true, actually. Ashur sucks. I hate Ashur. And, like, from that moment on, everybody talks about him like it's a foregone conclusion that he's evil. It was like in Lightlark, how everybody decided that it was Grimm that sent the Drex, like, before he even, like, confirmed that it was. And everyone's like, yeah, we're gonna go to war over this without, like, making any effort to make sure that we're right about that. It's the same thing. They're like, Ashur is a sinner. We don't like him. He's bad. And then later he shows up after the 450-year time skip, and he is, like, the head of the council. He's pro-Lamech taking over. He's actually, like, Lamech's right-hand guy all of a sudden. He's even the one who invited Lamech, it turns out, off screen to come visit, preparing for him to take over. And it's like, if we'd actually seen him become that and like make choices in that direction for reasons that we as the reader understand, again, way better propaganda. Like, if you can make this guy convincingly evil, but also make him convincingly human, but also demonstrate to us that he's wrong, then you make better evil art.
And it's not hard. You could do that. Forget what I was saying about it bringing a tear back. You can develop that further, and your skeleton's already there. Like, Ashur was really excited to have Lamech over when Lamech first arrived at the beginning of the book. So,
like, for a sleepover.
Well, he's an innkeeper, you know? Like, he is a business owner in this prehistoric capitalist society. It'll look really good on prehistoric social media to have the king stay at your inn. He's an innkeeper. This is a thing that he should want. He has the king in. He gets intoxicated by the opulence and wealth, and he gets addicted to it. That's human. That's easy. That squares perfectly with our moral system, and we can have that. I don't understand why we didn't, because it is literally just like, oh, Ashur's bad now.
He's bad. We all decided he's bad. He sucks, actually. He's always sucked. I hate him. I was never friends with him. Were you friends with him? Because I wasn't.
Speaking of deciding whether or not people suck, oh god, this feels really heretical. So there's a lot of references to Great Father Adam and Great Mother Eve.
Yeah.
With not living memory, but like your great grandfather knew or I guess was related to Adam. You know, I have stories of my great grandfather somewhere here and there. So like, if I knew that we used to live in an Arcadian wonderland without death, and it was my great grandfather's fault that we left, I would not hold them in reverence to the degree that they do in this world. I would be like,
that's a good point.
These guys sucked. They betrayed us. And now we live in this terrible world where T-Rexes try to kill us because of their fault. They're not great fathers. They're bad fathers. I don't know.
No, that's such a good point. Yeah, we would hate them for sure.
So,
especially Eve. Because she's the precedent for, like, women being subservient to men. Like, that is the reason that happened. So, above all else, the women in Iri Geshem would have a reason to dislike Eve.
Right, and this is, like, set dressing. I don't think it would materially affect the plot of the novel, but by your own trick of materializing this period of time and bringing it out of scripture and high-level, like, moral tales, you are shining a light at the experience of living in a world like this. And I know this is a stupid like cinema sins or like again like Fedora Atheist's first like thing is wow, Adam and Eve, those guys were kind of bad once you think about it, like, but I want to see that explored. We had weird world building about Eden with the like you go insane if you're anywhere near it, and that doesn't come back. And like I feel like there's a lot of untapped potential there to like squarely put us in the beginning of history. We're not in the medieval era. We're not in steampunk world. We are in the third generation of humans to exist. What's that like? What's our understanding of history?
Some of the things that are happening in this world are happening for the first time ever. Like, it's not a character's first time doing something, it's the first time in human history that this is happening.
Right.
Like, Imzara might be the first person to ever draw and see those dinosaurs. Mm-hmm. And, like, that should be more monumentous.
Right. Not just human history, but terrestrial history. There's nothing to dig up. Like, there's no fossils under the earth. Oh, I mean, there's metal because we need metal for our boats. But what I mean is, like, there's no ruins of an ancient past or whatever. It's just your great-grandfather. So I just thought it was interesting. Like, I mean... I
don't think that's too, like, Reddit atheisty, because, like, you're right. Like, the thing is, this book exists to get people to, like, either consider believing this or go further into their belief in it. And the question that you have raised is a legitimate one. People in the real world will ask this question. Therefore, the characters in the book should probably have a moment where they are willing to address this question as well. And they can have one of their little bat-away answers like they usually do, where it's like, I just believe God or whatever. But like still, like lampshaded a little.
Right. I mean, like, I'm in my 20s, but I hate Ronald Reagan. Like, there are historical figures whose specter haunts me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Definitely. This is short, so I also won't belabor it. It kind of ties into what we've been saying about Nama, but she's the only character with a real interior world. Like, she's the only character who, like, has ideas and decides to do things. Everybody else is just like, I will pray today. I love God.
Right.
I am going to Havil. Like, Noah is the biggest and worst example because we're in his head for so much of the book and he never has a thought. Like, he's so uninteresting.
Yeah.
I don't even know how to describe how boring he is. He just feels like a shell. Or actually, no. He feels like a piece of wood, appropriately. Because I feel like he's just completely solid all the way through. Yeah. Like, it's not like if you cracked him open, it would be empty. It's like it would just be like...
more
wood. Like, there's nothing, but there is something. I don't know. Like, this isn't making any sense, but...
No, I get what you're saying.
Dense.
He's dense. He is very dense. He is very dense. And that's doubly frustrating because there could have been an interior world for Noah at the very least. He gets a lot of stuff dropped on him this book that I would have loved to see a Nama style like self-doubt moment or a Noah style like steadfast faith. Like that could be interesting too in like a dramatic irony sort of way. Like there's ways it could have happened. It's not just...
I know somebody is going to hear that and be like, Jay, you're just completely wrong. Like, Noah has all these moments where he has doubt and then he prays and he feels better. And that's like technically having an interior world. And it's like, yes, technically it is, but like he's never actually reflecting. Like his conclusion is a foregone one because he has to be Noah at the end of the day. And that's a constraint of the project that the authors have set for themselves. It's probably just no getting around it, to be honest. But it's still a big problem because after a while I just get tired of like being in his perspective.
Right.
And that's not what you want when he's supposed to be the guy that like models biblical manhood, biblical husbanddom, biblical head of the house-ness, biblical business manager-ness. Like there's a lot that he has to do for us as readers if this is really a parable. And because he's not believable as like a human being, I'm less inclined to be convinced.
Right. I don't want to be him, you know? Like he's boring.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to be a good husband, a good businessmandom, and a good whatever daddy. But like,
daddy.
Oh, no, that's awful. But I don't want to be it like that, you know.
Yeah, man, it's like if I'm a man reading this, like I'm not feeling like this is winning me over to your side, guys.
Here's a surface level world building thing. The giants come out of nowhere. There's one giant, and when the giant is introduced, Noah was like, "Oh yeah, there are giants in this world." What do you mean? Are they new?
It's sucks position, Andrew. Classic sucks position. Get over it.
But did they come from somewhere? Like, I don't know. There's oh yeah, everyone lives to 800. That's totally normal. And hey, there's a whole different species of sentient creature out there that I have never seen before, but I've heard rumors of that I didn't think were true.
I am surprised that this is all the play that the Nephilim get, because I feel like when you're talking about like early Bible, like fictionalizing like early Bible scripture, Nephilim is like such an interesting one. I wish they had done more with it.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of all we can say, because he's just like a goon that like kills some of our characters and gets stomped on by a T-Rex, and like that's our
Lamech's
thing.
like killed Noah, and the cannibal giant is like, oh, okay, boss.
Yeah.
Okay, this is maybe too obvious almost.
Okay.
But like, where are all the dinosaurs in my dinosaur book? Like, the Ark Encounter is constantly trying to sell itself on the fact that like we have Bible dinosaurs, and by proxy, this book is, or by extension rather, this book is doing the same thing.
Yeah.
The dinosaurs are always so incidental, and that's really disappointing to me. Maybe this is just like a trappings of like aesthetic expectations, because like if you pitched a book with pirates on the cover, and then there was like one pirate character and the rest of it was more like solar punk or something, I would be weirded out and disappointed. This book is like promising dinosaurs, and then it rarely delivers. And when it does, they're usually like incidental, like characters comparing something to them, which is fine. It's good that they reference them, like they should be doing that. It makes them seem more like a part of the world. What happened to the super glider hill from the first book? Like that, it's like it doesn't exist anymore.
They went extinct because they drained all the iron and it polluted the environment.
To get the iron, they industrialized. Yeah, that's funny. Okay, this might be a little too niche, but did you ever play Sonic Rush Adventure?
No, I've not played
DS?
Sonic Rush Adventure for the DS.
It's the DS game that Blaze the Cat is from, but the first level is dinosaur themed for some reason. Like, you know, the first level of a Sonic game is always like a green environment, and for some reason in this one they went with dinosaur jungle. And as a kid, that really set me up to think like, okay, the dinosaurs are going to be part of like the mechanical and visual identity of this game.
Yeah.
But then the dinosaurs are set dressing in that level.
Right.
And I think you run along one of their tails or something, and they never come back. I was like, what the hell? Like, he promised me dinosaurs.
Right. You know what I would have wanted to see is like, think Flintstones, right?
Yeah.
So like,
I see where this is going.
I want to see, I don't mean like literal Flintstones. I mean like little integrations into the world building that account for the existence of T-Rexes who are so evil that they will try to slap you off of a bleachers to eat you better. Like, what there should be walls set up for archers to shoot the T-Rexes if they try to invade the village. They should set out feeding troughs for the velociraptors so they get full up on that and don't hunt livestock. Little things that
they should be like reinforcing the bottom of the boats, anticipating that they'll be attacked by like whatever aquatic dinosaurs are out
like an
there.
ichthyosaurus.
Yeah.
Little things, they don't have to like derail the plot, but just be like, wow, we learned how to reinforce the bottom of the hull just in case a Leopleurodon attacks, or Noah passed by the anti-T-Rex towers that were set up on the periphery of the city. Anything. Like, it would be interesting. It would work to like contextualize where these things come from, and like, I don't need to see dinosaurs all the time. I was being kind of like facetious about my dinosaur fight. The Pachycephalosauruses that show up for Imzara's character development are delightful in and of themselves. But like, even though we don't always come across like, I don't know, mountain lions, we still like are cautious of them, and they're still like in our minds when we go hiking or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I was reading an article the other day about some wolves. So like, if you go hiking here, it's a thing you have to think about. Like, you're not like quaking as you hike, like, oh, I hope a wolf doesn't get me. But like, it's good to be conscious of the fact that they are there, and like, if one was in a bad mood, it might hurt you.
Right. Yeah. And that's it. It doesn't change your life.
So Andrew, I've been hearing you refer to this book as like a YA book. And I'm inclined to just accept that and move on, but I'm simultaneously inclined to like pause on that for a second and be like, wait, is this a YA book? Like, who is this for? Because it has the trappings of YA fantasy, but then it has weirdly heavy stuff like a miscarriage, and it has like this whole bit about like being a good husband, which feels like it's more geared to instruct like adults that are married, but then like all of the characters operate mentally on the level of children.
Right.
So it's like, what is a product of them trying to like retell these Bible stories, and what is like their actual goal in like picking an age group, do you think?
My response to that comes with an apology. I less meant YA novel as much as novel for young adults. I'm probably going to piss off Robert Jordan fans, but reading this book feels exactly like reading Eye of the World. The characters, they would be adults, quote unquote, in the medieval sense. They're like 16 or so, but they act like little 10-year-olds running around. So there's that immaturity there, but heavy stuff happens, like demons attack, and it's like, it is a fantasy novel. And this, in much of the same way, is a fantasy novel. And heavy stuff happens, but yes, it's ultimately very childish. So it feels like primitive YA. I don't say YA to compare it to Lightlark or Fourth Wing.
Yeah.
Or I guess not Fourth Wing, but technically Fourth Wing in terms of like literary complexity. I mean more to compare it to your Aragons, your Wheel of Times, like that sort of thing.
Like in terms of reading level.
In terms of reading level and in terms of content.
Yeah, when you say early YA, it reminds me even of like how like the earliest YA books that were ever written, stuff like, I don't know, like The Pilgrim's Progress, like it began as like intentionally instructive for kids or young adults. And it feels like it's looping back around to that, where it's like, we wrote this to tell you what to do.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's very much a relic of its time. I like Wheel of Time, which is why I consider that reference point favorable, but it has all the same trappings to it.
I do think there's another question of target audience, though, that doesn't have so much to do with age. And it has to do with faith, I guess. So, okay, I would like for you to imagine that you are an atheist or just a non-Christian reading this book. And Andrew, this isn't for you so much as it is for the club member listening to this, for the girl reading this.
Right, for the atheist girl reading this.
For the atheist girl reading this. Imagine that you are that person. This book, if you were to read it over and over again, it would tell you that the reason that you are an atheist or just a non-believer generally is that you are wicked. It's that you want to like childishly rebel against God. And it's that you basically like can't control your impulses and are like a prideful person that's just weak. And here's the thing. If you are that person reading this, chances are you actually know why you aren't Christian. Like, you probably have reasons that you consider to be pretty good ones, whether they are or not.
Right.
And I think that this book is going to lose a lot of people by presuming to know what's going on in their heads, and by projecting what the authors think is going on inside atheist and non-Christian heads and telling them why that's bad, right? Like, I feel like this is weaker as a piece of propaganda because it has basically no power to actually change anybody's mind.
Yeah.
If you're an insider reading this, you're like, hell yeah, those wicked guys. And you probably would be willing to cop to the fact that it's an overly simplistic representation. Like, I'm sure that the Christians in my life would read this and be like, yeah, it's a little black and white. But ultimately, like, this book presumes to know people's intentions without actually asking them. Like, none of the characters, like you said, to our point about Ashur, none of the characters who convert ever give their case. And what case we're able to glean about Asher is that, like, he just likes money.
Right.
Which is like, okay, I mean, I believe that, but there's, like, probably more to it, as there would be with any actual real person. And so I think that this book, like, in a way, comes across as, like, a little bit arrogant and ironically prideful, because the first book was, like, very concerned with, is Noah too prideful? I remember there being, like, a whole Q&A section in the back that, like, really harped on that. And I was like, I mean, I don't really feel like Noah's prideful, but reading this, I do feel like this book is prideful.
Right.
Because it thinks that it can speak for, like, a group of people that it has already decided it dislikes.
And I have to reiterate how this could have been, from Namah's perspective, been just as, if not more effective, because it's coming from I'm an edgy atheist with one foot out of the church. This is my mentality. And it's such a phenomenal missed opportunity. And it does kind of feel self-congratulatory ? I don't exactly know the right word for it, but it feels like you are preaching to the choir. It's like I can't imagine being converted by this, because it's so nothing, and it dehumanizes. Like, I think a lot of Christians would tell you that there are very rational reasons to be an atheist. So to demonize anyone who could possibly have questions and not explore it beyond VeggieTales exposition trading between Tubal-Cain, since Ater's dead, and Noah, we don't get any olive branch extended to the fedora wearers in the audience, and that's
because Noah didn't get the olive branch yet. He doesn't get that until book 3, I assume.
Oh my god.
He's gonna learn empathy.
That would be great if they learned that.
It would be good. I'd be down for that. If like it took a hard pivot into like millennial mindfulness, like in the 3rd book, and they're like, we should really just like sit with our feelings,
right?
But I feel like this book is fundamentally, speaking of millennial mindfulness, like very incurious, which is also ironic for a book that's so interested in trying to imagine what the world could have been like during the historically attested time when humans and dinosaurs simultaneously walked the earth, as any fool knows happened.
Before the historically attested worldwide flood.
That's correct. Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
It's just like not curious in like, why do people believe other things than what we believe? Well, it must be because they suck and are evil. And it's like, yeah, I get that that's like psychologically comfortable and also easy, but it's like self-evidently not true.
I don't know. Am I the God's gift to enlightened centrist that I don't think that's comforting? You and I, Jay, have very different beliefs. Core values that are dear to our hearts are completely different. And I hope you don't think I'm an evil Satan worshiper who should be drowned in a flood. And I don't think that about you. I don't like living in a world where people who aren't like me are always evil. It's not comforting. It's terrifying.
Yeah, it's scary.
And I think that's intentional. I think they want to scare little homeschooled kids into retreating further into the church, which me personally, interfacing with people who have different beliefs than me, galvanize my personal beliefs. You know, like I'm not, there's a lot of times I'm not necessarily convinced by someone else's beliefs, but having the context that otherwise rational people can believe these things is like, okay, that's their perspective, this is mine. And it's like, the world church could be so much stronger if it existed in context of the things that were without it.
Yeah, I feel like fundamentally this book is hard to believe sometimes because, at least in my experience, an important part of being an adult has been being able to not like completely change my opinion after a difficult conversation with somebody, but at least like modify it to like more accurately represent, I don't know, the experience that occurred, like whatever it was that we were talking about. Like, I feel like that's a thing that you have to be able to do. And this book is so rigid. It's like like we have it all figured out. We know exactly what all of the answers that matter are. And everybody else is just wrong, and they're coping, and they're seething, and they're mauling about it.
Right.
And that's why they want to kill us, because they know they're wrong. And it's like,
no.
But that's not true.
Right.
You know that's not true. So it's so sad, really.
Yeah. You want to fix this?
My good people.
He straightened the crown on his head.
Tubal-Cain and Nama are brother and sister. They are my children, and they will demonstrate before you their loyalty to Nakash and their unity to this new, wonderful nation. Bring forth the sacrifices.
2 scantily clad, stone-faced women came forward, each with a baby in her arms. They stood in front of the towering serpent statue, its golden head held aloft, forked tongue ready to receive innocent blood. Lamech gestured to a guard who quickly handed him a knife. He held it out to his son.
And now, here is my son to offer the first official sacrifice of Iri Geshem, the northern chief city of Havilah.
The color drained from Tubal-Cain's face, and he folded his arms across his broad chest, refusing to take the dagger. Shock rippled through the crowd, slowly silencing their cheers. "Come on, Tu, it's just one baby!" Nama tapped her foot on the stone flooring. It's just one baby, come on!
Well, Andrew, I feel like, as a stern father ought to be, we have been fair and harsh. And now it's time to soften the metaphorical blow that we've just laid across this book with some helpful advice as we build it back up. Now that we've broken it down, as a good father does, we're going to build it back up.
Tim and K. Marie, as your book daddy of the afternoon, I have devised a foolproof way to improve your piece of evil Christo-fascist propaganda, because that's what this podcast has come to.
Well, you know, it's all about helping people in need, so we might as well.
Right. So this dovetails nicely with where we left off with the bad stuff, because one of my big suggestions centers around consideration of other people's perspectives. So Tubal-Cain and then the random sexy dancer that gets saved and hides out in the inn are both from Havil, grew up in Havil, like lived in Satan Town for as long as they can remember, were immersed in it from birth.
We're like at least like passively accepting of this religion.
Right, to a point. I can buy that they are totally done with it. I can buy that the allure of the idyllic little life in Iri Geshem is very palpable to them. What I don't like is how they seamlessly integrate to the culture. And I'm not talking about big stuff here. Let's take Tubal-Cain as case in point, because the sexy dancer comes and goes, and I don't think she ever comes back. So
I don't think so.
So Tubal-Cain is, despite his good nature, a prince who has manifestly grown up, pampered, has his every whim taken care of, lived in a palatial estate, and been set up for a life in which he will never have to work. So I'm okay with him deciding that this life isn't for him and that he wants to go be a blacksmith. But there should be little points of friction. Like, it doesn't have to be serious. Like, maybe Tubal-Cain, when he first moves, he doesn't know how to dress himself properly. Like, he always misses his buttons because his butler used to do it for him. Or, like, he has this quirk where he can't, like, gauge the price of wares at the market. Like, he's like, it's just a loaf of bread. How much can it be? 20 pikas? Like, that kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like, little things that, like, I am a prince coming from opulence, and I'm trying my damnedest to integrate into this society, but it's not working quite well. To humorous and good-spirited effects. I don't mean to, like, turn this into something deep, but what I think this would do is it would underscore, like, even within creatorism, there are different kinds of people, and that's okay, and that should be encouraged. And that could supplement a lot of the TFLD. You could have it just be like, oh, Tubal-Cain, you're so silly. This loaf of bread isn't 3 million pikas. And have that little thing. You can have a little story about wealth and why wealth is bad and stuff like that. Like, it's so fun. Like, you could come up with these scenes all day and you have ample ground to just jettison dialogue and replace it with stuff like this.
Emphasize what a good prince Tubal-Cain is for giving up princedom, not being hungry for power. And yeah, maybe he struggles to adjust to, like, peasant life, but he's a good guy and he's willing to humble himself and figure it out. Meanwhile, the dancer girl, you know, like, she wants to wear her crop top around town, and everybody's like, hey, you can't show that. Like, people get horned up and we don't really approve of that here. And she's like, oh, okay, let me try putting on, like, a skirt and going barefoot and marrying a man and being pregnant. And then she's like, oh, you know what? I'm actually very fulfilled by this. And then propaganda achieved. Like, it's really that easy.
Right. But we can't have that because it's always, you're such a good boy, Noah. Thank you for not cheating on my daughter 2 years ago. I'm going to talk about how much of a good boy you are for the next 2 pages before I get murdered. It's like, it's right there. It is right there for you.
Noah needs goals. Like, he needs to have like immediate story goals, like to drive the plot forward in the meantime. I know that Tim and K Marie are really married for whatever reason to this version of this story where it's mostly about pre-flood as opposed to like immediate pre-flood, during, and post-flood, which I personally would think would be a lot more interesting. But since they're married to this format, and we as readers know that there is time until Noah does the Noah thing that Noah does, we need him to like have interstitial things that he's after. We could even go back to the first book and try to like backfill something, because him like pining after Emzara could be like the main plot of that book. Like, what is it to be a man courting a woman in a biblical way, right? That can be the moral of that one. In this one, we can condense more of the Havil stuff and be like, now that Noah is a married man, what does it mean to be a married man that's like well-placed in society when there's this other culture coming in and trying to like influence you away from the creator, right? Like, that seems like a natural escalation and arc, and it gives him something that's like worthwhile for the reader to be doing while we're waiting for the flood.
So you don't think that selling bigger and better boats is a good enough character motivation for Noah, is what you're saying?
I don't think Noah passively being like, yeah, I like making bigger boats, maybe I'll try that, is really sufficient to drive, 300 pages.
I can incorporate this into my biggest suggestion. I don't think this would fix what you're saying, but I think it could distract us for long enough for this to like get swept up under the rug.
Yeah. Hit us with some pocket sand.
Yes, pocket sand. So in book 1, in our episode, we remarked how weird it was that we know for a fact the world will be flooded because it is too evil, yet there are all these Keebler elves running around, and we were like, why isn't this a lot more evil? There should be like more child sacrifice stuff going on. And there actually is a right way to handle this kind of mismatch that I didn't think of when we were recording, but this book almost does this. It almost does this. So Noah hears a voice from God saying, I am going to flood the world soon. Start making a boat for your family. And he has to like debate with himself whether or not to believe this on one hand, when to build the boat, and where. Like, the actual shipyard that he uses becomes a point of contention because Havila takes over the city and now he can't use it, stuff like that. So I want to mire in this feeling. What is it like to know that God is going to kill everybody you know, or that everybody you know will die by happenstance before God kills all the world? Like, I want every scene to be like the surprise party. I want the God message to come very, very early in the book, maybe in the first TFLD, maybe right before Ara and Atera are killed. Like, somewhere where like the entire book becomes TFLD, but with the underscore of these people will die, and Noah has to act natural. Noah has to debate whether or not to tell Emzara. We can drag that out because he just like considers it for a second and then walks up to her and tells her. He could hide that for her for longer. I want the entire book to be that deep, deep discomfort and like struggle with faith. I don't think that would be a quote unquote motivation, but I think it would be more interesting than exchanging pleasantries.
It would be interesting because there would also be like a kind of macabre delight for the reader, like wondering how all of the characters that we know are good are going to get picked off in, like you said, circumstantial ways before the flood. Right. Because like reasonably very few of the good guys are going to die in the flood, because that would suggest that God saw something in them that like we don't know about, that like they're deserving of death, which is weird. So it makes more sense for them to get picked off in other ways. And I think like you're saying, if we know that from the start, then we get to be like, oh no, like who's going to be next? Like they're just whittling down the characters at this point, and like anybody, it could be anybody. And Noah has so little time with them left, and like he cares about them and he's trying to like maximize it, but also be natural. Like I could see a scene where he's like, I don't know, kind of paranoid, like trying to make the most of time with these people, knowing that they're going to die, but not telling them. Or
on the other side of the coin, he could go through like the stages of grief and get despondent about it. Like, what if there's an emergency at the blacksmith shop and Tubal Cain is like pinned under an anvil or whatever, and Noah has to think like, Tubal-Cain is going to die eventually. Why don't I put him out of his misery now so that he doesn't have to get subjected to the flood or die by the hands of these evil people? Like, the entire... This could increase Noah's interior world that you were mentioning about how he doesn't have that. Everything he does could be a debate about whether or not he should continue this walk of faith and wait for this inevitable shoe to drop.
He could even be wondering, say Tubal-Cain's pinned under that anvil, he could even be wondering if, like, killing or ensuring that Tubal-Cain dies is what he's supposed to do.
Right.
Like, he could be like, if I save him, is that, like, heresy? Because God said everybody was going to die. So, like, if I step in, am I then betraying God? Like, God hasn't, like, told me, like, the nuances of this. Like, what am I supposed to be doing?
Right. And you have the space to do all of this. You can accordion out the dialogue and then put all this stuff back in, shuffle the God scene to the 10, 15, 20% mark, and just follow that thread throughout. I'd also want to see, like, on the other side of that, so whether or not we increase the length of time that Noah keeps the flood a secret from Imzara, I want to see her being more resistant to the idea. She cries about it, but then she's like, oh, if you say so, we'll go along with it. And I don't like that. I feel like Imzara, especially since she's made out to be this very sensitive and kindly woman, should take longer to come around to the idea. And I'm really nervous to make that suggestion, because what it'll turn into is more like nagging wife needs to be whipped into shape moments. But, like, this is not an easy pill to swallow. Even if you have unshakable faith, and I know Noah is supposed to be exemplary of unshakable faith, this is not an easy thing to hear. And if our whole point is putting our feet to the fire and making us get immersed in what this world would be like, I think this is your chance right here.
It has to be somewhat realistic, because, like, the real Christians reading this have real nuanced feeling concerns about their own faiths. So if Noah's problems are either not complicated or he immediately accepts them, there is nothing to be learned from him. He's not an example anymore.
He's just made out of wood.
Well, Andrew, I think it's time that we see what our secret third podcast co-host has to say about what we might consider to fix this, and maybe even move into book 3. How does that sound to you?
Is our secret podcast co-host the spirit of evil that allows you to perform prestidigitation?
That's correct. The secret third co-host of the podcast is a set of cards that are made of skin, and as you can see, they're inked in blood. I got them from a guy. It doesn't matter. He's dead, but he could see the future, and now I can also see the future. I know like 6 other guys that can do that too, but they don't matter right now.
They don't matter. No.
So, and some of them are frozen and abroad. They're abroad sailing the seas. So we just have to settle for me right now. All right. Let's see what we've got to kick things off. The first card I drew is the Hierophant. It's upright. It's a card that fits this so well that it almost feels obvious. So the Hierophant stands for like structure and institution, but like often specifically religious institution. That makes me wonder like how, if Noah like were to tell other people, they might react to this message.
Yeah.
Like how they might then relate to their own faith. And I think that's like a potential third direction that we could take this story. Like, what if Noah did tell other people? And then that like changed the way that people relate to God. Like, I mean, I could see that actually turning more people away.
Mm-hmm. They hinted about that because they were like, there was a reference to Enoch. Enoch, his grandfather, used to go to cities and be like, God is going to punish you. And he was occasionally correct. And that could be a mirror of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to remember because I did read a summary of these a long time ago, and I think something like that does happen in the third one. Like, I think Noah starts trying to convince people towards the end, and they don't want to listen, which does nicely mirror his grandfather. Like, it creates a feeling of like legacy. I don't know what that like does for the book thematically, but it does. It's nice that it's there. It's some kind of structure.
Yeah.
Next up, we have the Knight of Swords. This is a card that usually represents or can represent like intellectual acumen or ambition. I think that for me, this is mostly a reiteration of like the fact that Noah needs to like be a little bit more driven. And I think an additional benefit of him doing that we haven't talked about yet is that it would make him feel more like a parallel of Nama, kind of. Then we have like our good servant of the good god and our bad servant of the bad god. We have like a Sonic and Shadow thing kind of going on where they're like rivals. And everybody loves that.
Everyone loves Sonic and Shadow.
Last up we have the Four of Swords, also upright.
Ooh.
This is a card, it can mean like rest or seclusion, depending on if it like makes more sense in the reading for it to be positive or negative. Okay, let's go back around to your suggestion that like Noah becomes like weird and like cloistered after hearing that all of his friends are going to die. I'm interested in how that would impact Amzara. Like if she would feel... I think there could be some like marital tension then. Like she might feel differently and like want to tell people, like you're saying, because she's more sensitive.
Yeah.
Or at least have like a more visible reaction, and people start to wonder why all of a sudden Amzara is like weepier than she used to be, and she gets weird and like cloying around her friends. And Noah could be like trying to like get her to stop doing that, be like, hey Amzara, you're kind of like being weird, it's going to give away something's up, like we agreed not to talk about this. And again, of course, what we're ultimately suggesting is like, here's how you make better propaganda is you show an opportunity where this guy can like tell his wife what to do and she listens, as an example of like biblical femininity. But I don't know, there would at least be some tension there. For a minute it would be a story.
Something, yeah. That'd be nice, a story.
Because all of their conflict is always contained to a single scene, anytime they argue. And the same goes with Noah's like spiritual doubts. It's always, it comes and goes.
He's very good at debating with himself.
You know, that's the thing about Noah. When he debates with himself, he always wins.
Ultimate debate streamer. Well, that sure was heretical, Jay. I hope that doesn't come true, because that would just increase your disgusting satanic powers and cause immorality to rule. Now that heresy is wrapped up, I hope that was helpful. Do we have any last words for Tim and K. Marie, old Jay, before we send them on our way?
To Tim and K. Marie, I will say, I admire that you have such a clear vision. I think you might just need to take an additional step back and consider why that vision, and like whether what you're putting into the world is a net good.
Yeah, that's a very good question to ask yourself, guys. I would say about the same thing. This book was like at once extremely engaging and extremely frustrating and extremely scary, because I was engaging with it to a degree that I felt like should not be happening.
Just when you thought you were out, it pulls you right back in.
It really does. I feel kind of gross, not like Rich Shapiro gross, but like, I don't know, like broadly gross. If you are in the Order of the Orb Fox, please vote for Blood of Hercules or some like unchallenging text that we can just kick around for a couple hours. These things take a lot out of me. I think we need to call it a night. Our authors have been real good sports here. We've really bandied around with their religion and worldview, so I really admire their diplomacy here. You're very much like a evil king that's come in to try to enter in a diplomatic trade agreement, but ultimately we decided that we just don't like your culture, so you need to go away now.
We don't like your ideas too much.
Right.
We don't cotton to your kind around these parts.
We don't cotton to freaks around these parts. Scram, weirdo. I'm gonna go talk to my definitely alive father-in-law and best friend, whom I love very much.
Oh, that's so funny. I was just about to call my father-in-law and best friend and check in with them, since I haven't seen them in a minute.
Well, I'm sure they'll be living and everything will be okay once the sun sets on another beautiful day at the St. Balasar University English Club podcast. I think we can call it an episode, and we will see you guys around campus.
See you around campus. 450 years later, Erie Sauna, Noah's 499th year. Noah slapped the beast's rump and the animal lurched forward. He watched his brother as they pulled away on their short trip across the few fields to their own farm. Normally, they would walk, but this time a wagon had been needed to haul all the supplies for their daughter's wedding. Shaking his head, Noah's mind drifted back to the marriage ceremony the day before. Marneka, the 31st and youngest child of Jerah and Peavy, made a beautiful bride, but, though the celebration exhibited the traditions acknowledging the Creator, Noah had grieved the lack of sincerity. From his first brief discussions with Marenka's new husband, he had gathered the man had very little interest in walking with the Most High. The thought made him ache for his wife, his beautiful, godly Emzara, who followed the Creator in spite of all they endured. He looked at the festive pattern woven into the edge of his fine celebration clothing. Thinking of his wife's efforts in fashioning it made him miss her even more.
Me when I don't do anything for 450 years after escaping from Satan Town for the second time, and I just leave it there.
Well, that just happened. Anyway.
Anyways, I don't care.